to get the word out.
The state law enacted in 2002 largely benefits working parents. It allows them to take time off from work to care for loved ones for up to 6 weeks and still get paid 55% of their salaries.
To take care of a newborn baby or a newly adopted baby or their parents or their spouse or domestic partner. And it was just expanded to cover grandparents, grandchildren, and siblings.
Former state Senator Sheila Kuehl authored the California Paid Leave Act. Millions of people are eligible. So are you if state disability insurance is deducted from your earnings. But only a fraction of those eligible are taking advantage.
Because they are afraid of retaliation from their employer, and it's state law. So they are obligated to allow them to take the 6 weeks with partial pay.
Councilmember Nury Martinez is now on a mission to spread that message. She's introduced a motion directing city departments to post reminders of these state rights in city-owned buildings. Now, these buildings would include public libraries, art and recreation centers. Martinez says a poster campaign is in the works. The advertising would largely target lower-income and immigrant communities. She says they're the most likely not to take advantage of the law because they're unaware. And also for fear of retaliation.
I know it takes some guts sometimes when your employer threatens you, but the employer is acting illegally and people have to call them out on it.
The state law is being duplicated in Congress, where lawmakers aim to make paid family leave a national law. At City Hall, Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
Councilmember Martinez has also urged the LA City Council to support the federal bill, now dubbed the National Family Act. As the entertainment community mourns the loss of Hollywood executive Tom Sherrick, Mayor Eric Garcetti is picking up where his good friend left off and continuing his effort to slow runaway production with the appointment of a new film czar. Yana Kay has more.
It was just last September at Raleigh Studios when Mayor Eric Garcetti named Hollywood executive Tom Sherrick as his new senior film advisor. And now, after Sherrick's unexpected passing in early February from cancer, the mayor is building on the foundation laid by his good friend by tapping Sherrick's successor. Entertainment attorney Ken Zifrin will now be the city's chief advisor on motion picture and television production. Zefrin and Garcetti will work together to help curb runaway production and keep middle-class jobs in the city.
Jobs for carpenters, for painters, electricians, makeup artists, caterers, truck drivers. Jobs that pay well enough to help people save for a college education for their children, as well as for their own retirement.
As part of the effort, the mayor has already signed an ordinance that waives city fees for filming pilots in L.A.
And as mayor, I am committed to making sure that the Golden State returns the luster that it had in this industry, to keep our signature industry in this town right where it belongs.
The mayor says he and Zefrin will work towards boosting the local economy by increasing production through expanded state incentives. They say California needs to level the playing field with other states like New York that offer lucrative filming tax credits.
We have to be competitive with those states. We have to fight to keep these jobs here, not only for those jobs that are within the industry, but for our entire economy here in Los Angeles.
And Garcetti hopes with Hollywood heavyweights like Zifrin on his team, we'll all be hearing lights, camera, action more often in L.A. I'm Yana Kay for LA This Week.
Next week here on LA This Week, we will report on two films mainly produced here in LA that received Councilman Tom LaBonge's Made in Hollywood Award this year. We'll also bring you a special report on how the Oscar season boosts the local hospitality and retail industries. Well, LA is taking a page out of the playbook of cities like Seattle, San Francisco, and New York, and making its sidewalks into destinations. Yana Kay explains the People Street program and how sidewalks are being transformed into gathering places.
San Pedro resident Liz Johnson is attending this public meeting to see how she and the city of Los Angeles can help make her neighborhood, where she has lived for the last 15 years, more pedestrian and bike friendly.
We're really proud and excited that the Department of Transportation is taking a chance and doing this project and helping people make their neighborhoods more livable.
The project Liz is talking about is called People Street, a new Department of Transportation program which seeks to expand and enhance the pedestrian experience on public streets.
They help make it a little bit safer for walking and biking on a street because they help to calm traffic. They enhance the vitality of the corridor and for businesses by increasing foot traffic.
People Street encourages residents to give their input on where they think would be the best places around the city to create public space and which kind of public space. Of the 3 options residents are asked to consider, one is a plaza like this Sunset Triangle Plaza in Silver Lake, which converts a portion of the street into a public space with tables, chairs, umbrellas, and planters. The second option is a parklet, like this one in El Sereno, which extends the sidewalk onto the street and creates a pedestrian-friendly space. The third is a bicycle corral, which transforms seldom-used parking spaces into bike racks.
It's really about seeing things a little bit differently in the city and letting folks in the community who know their neighborhoods best propose project locations and build partnerships to help bring these projects to life.
Projects that officials hope will bring communities and neighbors together. I'm Yana Kay for LA This Week.
For more information on upcoming People Street meetings, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/LA This Week. Earlier, we spoke about the drought here in LA, and it's these dry conditions that make groundwater recapture more and more critical. As Anna Marcos tells us, One Valley community is marking a new era in water conservation on its street.
1, 2, 3.
The green ribbon cutting marks the start of a greener community. People on Woodman Avenue in Panorama City are celebrating a new stormwater capture project, which will recapture water runoff, filtrate and clean it, and charge the groundwater table back up.
We have basically a median that's about 3/4 of a mile long. It was covered with asphalt in the past. It had a few trees that were struggling. We went ahead and removed the asphalt cap. We removed the existing trees that were here before. We dug down about 8 foot deep, and we built storm chambers that are capturing close to 100 acres of water.
We are an example, a positive example to the world, that where there was concrete and where there was water just running away, we can actually do the right thing and preserve it.
The San Fernando Water Basin, which the project feeds into, is one of 5 basins in LA that provide a critical and valuable local water supply.
In this drought and the water supply issues that we have, this is another example of how you think globally but act locally.
That we can capture that much stormwater and get it to our local water supply, the San Fernando Groundwater Basin, instead of throwing it away as a means to deliver pollution to the ocean, is phenomenal.
Drought-resistant plants and landscaping, an irrigation system, and information signs will also make the project both beautiful and educational.
It's actually a learning experiment. It's also something that kids can walk to and we can talk about what sustainability means.
It has multi-benefit, as you can see. It enhances the community, it provides open space, green space, and there is going to be some educational signage.
City leaders hope to create more green projects like this throughout the city. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
Close to half of the project's $3.4 million budget comes from State Prop 50 funds. The Department of Public Works and LADWP helped spearhead the project. Ecuadorian Americans recently held a celebration attended by none other than our mayor, a celebration of their identity as Americans and of their connection to their homeland. Yana Kay has more.
The sounds of the classical guitar gently resonate throughout the Tom Bradley Tower at City Hall as Ecuadorian American artists and musicians perform traditional music from their ancestral home.
Even though I wasn't born in Ecuador, my blood is Ecuadorian, so I remember that and I'm inspired to do Spanish music.
The music is all part of the anniversary of the Ecuadorian American dual citizenship celebration. As dual citizens, these folks here say not only can they enjoy all the benefits offered by the United States,
but it's also wonderful to know that we have our legal rights like Ecuadorians and go back and vote and elect our president and our vice president.
The event also recognized the contributions made by the Ecuadorian American community.
When we look at Los Angeles and what we've built here, this example to the world, your story is my story. The generations that have come here seeking a better life and that have built great cities
And I always think that Los Angeles is one of the greatest Ecuadorian cities in the world.
Several Ecuadorian Americans received certificates for all the work they do on behalf of the community.
It's a great opportunity to come together and say thank you, because we're all here to love America and participate as Americans.
I'm Yana Kay for LA This Week.
The fire department prepares to launch a new 911 call handling system. The city sets aside $10 million for sidewalk repairs, and Silver Lake no longer an East Side community. These stories and more in City Beat. The LA Times is reporting that the Los Angeles Fire Department is launching a sweeping overhaul of its 911 call handling procedures. By early next year, the agency expects its dispatchers to be required to ask fewer questions of the caller before sending LAFD ambulances en route, resulting in what officials hope will be faster response times during time-critical emergencies. The changes follow a barrage of criticism of the current 911 response system, which reportedly required dispatchers to ask lengthy and confusing questions that callers must answer before dispatchers send help. Councilman Joe Buscaino has introduced a motion that would allocate $10 million to repair the city's damaged sidewalks. The proposal would divide the money evenly among 3 repair priorities. At locations where past claims and lawsuits have been filed in high pedestrian use areas and along iconic streets citywide. The final third would be allocated equally among the 15 council districts for a 50-50 program. That program splits the cost of sidewalk repairs with residents. The verdict is in, at least it is according to the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, which has voted to stop referring to Silver Lake as an East Side neighborhood. The vote comes as some residents of Lincoln Heights and Boyle Heights have objected to communities such as Echo Park and Silver Lake being referred to as East Side communities. Both of those neighborhoods are on the west side of the Los Angeles River, which has historically been used to separate the city's east from the west. The San Fernando High School football players received a special acknowledgement at Van Nuys City Hall recently. The team was honored by council members Felipe Fuentes and Nuri Martinez for their undefeated season.
San Fernando High School this year went 14-0 to win the City Section Division II championship. The Tigers came through in a very exciting second half championship game, which I was in attendance, to beat Southgate High School 34-32. And big round of applause.
I know a thing or two about not giving up, and even when you thought you were your backs were up against the wall, you fought hard.
The team's championship game victory marked their 18th straight win. It was also the first time the Tigers won back-to-back championship games since the 1974-75 season. An Oscar-winning actor and a legendary soul singer are among the honorees at a special ceremony kicking off African American Heritage Month here in Los Angeles. Gil Reyes reports from City Hall.
Whoa, she gonna be the one. We're gonna have some babies. Listen.
R&B legend Uncle Charlie Wilson serenading fans outside City Hall. Former lead singer of funk favorites, the Gap Band, is also a prostate cancer survivor and spokesman.
African-American men are 2 times likely to die from this disease than anybody else. So I have a platform that I speak from to urge African-American men to go get tested for this disease.
For his artistic and civic contributions, Wilson receives the Spirit of LA Award, one of several honors.
To celebrate in this month, African American History Month in the city of Los Angeles.
We're very proud to join with Mayor Eric Garcetti in honoring some great citizens who have contributed to our community.
Among them, former LA County Supervisor Yvonne Brathwaite-Burke.
And it's such an honor for them to consider the accomplishments of some of us who have worked very hard. I'm very honored for myself.
And retired Cal State LA President Dr. James Rosser. With over 30 years on the job, he's California's longest-serving African-American college president.
Well, it's a nice way to be acknowledged for what this city has given to me, and I'm just grateful that I was able to give something back.
Retired federal judge Consuelo Marshall helped pave the way for female litigators. Her City Hall visit is a homecoming of sorts.
I started my career here in this building
in the city attorney's office, so I was the first woman lawyer hired in the city attorney's office, and certainly the office now is probably well over 50% women.
Golden Globe winner Angela Bassett and Oscar winner Louis Gossett Jr. are recognized for championing diversity and the arts.
I was just in awe of the other honorees, and just, marveling like, how in the world did I get here? But it's been a great journey for each and every one of us.
I think Los Angeles has got a great opportunity because of its diversity to be the first successfully diverse city in America, and then show the rest of the country by example.
There will also be a number of special events in honor of this special month, including a History of Jazz photo exhibit at the LA Central Library in downtown. For a full rundown of those events, log on to culturela.org. Outside City Hall, Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
We will also post events from African American Heritage Month on our Facebook page. And in this week's list of things to do, picking grapefruit, a green living fair, and a public radio live taping at the Egyptian Theater. If you're a grapefruit lover, join in the 2014 Orcutt Ranch Do-It-Yourself Fruit Pick on Saturday, February 22nd, and Sunday, February 23rd, from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. each day. It's $3 for every bag of grapefruit you pick, or $5 per medium box. Bring your own bags and your own fruit picker, or you can rent one for $1. No ladders are allowed. Orcutt Ranch, a recreation and parks facility, is located at 23600 Roscoe Boulevard in West Hills. Call 818-346-7449 for more info. And it's a family-friendly and environmentally friendly event. The Green Living Fair on Saturday, February 22nd, takes place from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Richard Lillard Outdoor Classroom, located at Valley Heart Drive and Long Ridge Avenue in Studio City. The event, organized by the Studio City Neighborhood Council and the Village Gardeners, will include live music and theater and dance performances, kids' activities, urban farming, beekeeping, a free fruit tree adoption, and much more. Go to studiocitync.org for details. If you love KPCC and you love films, then KPCC 89.3 FM's Film Week Oscar Preview is the event for you. The weekly program will be taping its annual 2-hour Oscar preview episode on Sunday, February 23rd, in front of a live audience starting at 1 p.m. Host Larry Mantle will be joined by several film critics, including Andy Klein of the LA Times Community Papers chain, Peter Rayner of the Christian Science Monitor, and Henry Sheehan of DearHenrySheehan.com. The taping will take place at the Egyptian Theater at 6712 Hollywood Boulevard. For more details and ticket information, go to AmericanCinemaTech.com. And that's a look at some upcoming things to do. LA is serious about celebrating and reviving its mural culture. And in the San Fernando Valley, a local artist joins forces with the neighborhood council and a local school to bring murals and the arts back where it once blossomed. Some are calling it the Reseda Renaissance, an effort to rebuild Reseda through the arts. And at the centerpiece of this community-wide effort is this mural at the Magnolia Science Academy in Reseda of Albert Einstein. The mural was created by San Fernando artist Levi Ponce, a man Councilman Bob Blumenfield calls one of San Fernando Valley's most precious treasures.
At 26 years old, you've distinguished yourself as one of the most important artists in our community. You're helping alter the visual fabric of this area and revitalize Reseda, which is a goal that we all have.
Ponce was showered with praise at the ribbon cutting of this mural, his second one in Reseda. But Ponce used his time at the microphone to turn the attention to those who will be looking at the mural day in and day out.
The title of this piece is called Logic and Imagination, and that's because I want students to remember, much like I would notice, that what we learned in school, the logic, the facts, the knowledge that we gain in school is not enough to just pass tests, but it's something that we need to use and apply for greater aspirations, right? For imagination, it's something to build on, something to use to create a better and brighter future.
And it seems like residents are also hoping for a greater and brighter future for Reseda, thanks to this mural and other recent endeavors to make Reseda an arts destination.
Everybody's talking about Reseda right now, which is great because prior to all this art activity, the things that people would say about Reseda weren't too flattering. So it's just really nice to have people saying such great things about Reseda and also about Levi. We're just so proud of him.
A proud moment for a community that's taking a lesson from Einstein, using both logic and imagination to put Reseda on the map. Ponce partnered with 1111, a creative collective, on bringing this mural about. And that's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellen Chang. A reminder that you could catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
Water in LA is limited. Every drop is precious, but we can all do our share. Fix water leaks, replace grass with California-friendly plants, and get a rebate of up to $2 per square foot. Run your sprinklers based on your street address. Odd addresses on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Even addresses on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Before 9 a.m. or after 4 p.m. The future of LA is in our hands, and that's a good thing.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
Sergeants, please. Mr. O'Farrell has arrived. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, February 19th. Want to welcome you to your Los Angeles City Council meeting. This council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. The public is welcome. Mr. Clerk, I do believe we have a quorum. Could you please call the roll?
Blumenfield, Bonner, Buscaino, Cedillo, Englander, Fuentes, Huizar, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Martinez, O'Farrell, Parks, Price, Wesson, 12 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Bonin moves, Fuentes seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Labange moves, Koretz seconds. That brings us where?
Mr. President, we have requests from the Department of Building and Safety.
Wait, Alan. Shh. Okay, now let's begin.
We have requests from the Department of Building and Safety to receive and file item 1C inasmuch as the lien has been paid, and to continue items 1A and 1B to March 5.
Without objection, that'll be the order.
Pardon me, sir. I do believe we have a card in on item 1B. and 1A. Would you like to hold it on the desk?
Might as well. No, they're willing. Okay, so then if that's the case.
So we could continue items 1A and 1B to March 5 and receive and file item 1C in as much as the lien has been paid.
Fine. Next.
Very good, sir. Items 2 through 5 are items noticed for public hearing. Please note that on item 5, the issuer is the California Statewide Communities Development Authority, as noted on motion Parks Wesson, and previously approved by Council, and not the California Municipal Finance Authority as indicated on today's agenda.
Okay. Do we have cards?
Yes, sir. We have cards on item 4.
Okay, let's vote on the remaining. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, that brings us where?
Items 6 through 14 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Specials members? Well, we definitely want to hold 10. Mr. Labange.
In honor of Tony Valdez, number 11, special.
Number 11 for Mr. Labange. Any other? Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President, but I don't wish to call these special. I do want to recognize that Mr. George Hovagamian and Donna Choi are being put on the Building and Safety Commission and the East Area Planning Commission, respectively, and they'll go on consent. Thank you.
Fine. Okay, let's, Mr. Bonnet.
Clerk instructs me I need to call 13 special since it came from committee without a recommendation.
Okay, then 13. Mr. Koretz.
I'd also like to acknowledge my friend Eric Spiegelman, who's going to be on the Board of Taxi Cab Commissioners and is incredibly knowledgeable on the subject, and he'll be great to work with.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, let's prepare to vote. Madam Clerk, open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, that brings us where, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, that brings us to items 15 through 20. There are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, so without objection, those items are now before us. We have cards?
We have cards on 15 through 19, sir. That leaves item 20.
Okay, let's vote on item 20. Unless there's specials from the members, none. I see none. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Proceed.
Mr. President, item 21 is an item scheduled for closed session. Would you like to hold it on the desk?
Yeah, let me hold that until Mr. Krikorian arrives. So that brings us where?
Mr. President, that takes council back to presentations.
Okay, at this time, Bob, Mr. Blumenfield, you ready to proceed? Okay, so we want to turn the floor over to Mr. Bob Blumenfield.
Come through this way. You guys come on up so we can all stand up here. Well, you're all in the TV shot. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That group is okay.
Okay, colleagues.
Okay, if we could have some silence. Mr. Blumenfield, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I rise today to honor one of the Valley's treasured nonprofit organizations. The group is called Tierra del Sol. The Tierra del Sol Foundation was founded in 1971 by pioneering parents who were determined to create a better world for their children and their families. The organization is founded upon and dedicated to the notion that all people have gifts and that our community is richer when all of our citizens are valued for their contributions. Tierra del Sol works to empower people with developmental disabilities to fulfill their potential to become productive citizens who are accepted and valued for the contributions that they make to the economic, civic, and cultural vitality of our community. Believing that human potential for creativity is not limited by physical or intellectual disabilities, I have worked with Tierra del Sol for many years, well before I was ever in the council or in the State Assembly. And this is an organization that's not only close to me, but it's close to a lot of people who are close to me. My district director, prior to getting into politics, worked for Tierra del Sol for 15 years. My father is on the board of Tierra del Sol. This is an organization that has tremendous reach in the value and impacts many, many people in a very positive way. It's also an organization that not only does the work in terms of helping people, but the folks, the president, Steve Miller, also goes out and works on the policy issues that affects people with developmental disabilities. In fact, when I was budget chair and we were grappling with some very difficult choices having to do with making cuts, huge cuts across the board to many human services and developmental issues, Steve came up and you know, at first was just wanted to say, no, don't do it, don't make any cuts. But when we had to, worked with me to figure out ways that we could make the cuts that we had to make, but do it in a way that least impacted the clients and minimize the cuts that we could. And that was extremely helpful to not only me as the budget chair at the time, but to the state of California in terms of making those cuts more humane and getting us through a crisis with the least amount of damage to vulnerable people. So thank you, Steve, for your assistance in that. Now, recently, I've opened up my both my Reseda and my Reseda district office as well as my City Hall office to become a gallery, an art gallery for the artists at Tierra del Sol's Fine Arts program, which is at the First Street Gallery Arts Center in Sunland Studio Arts. So they have their art displayed in my office, in both offices, and I invite all of you to come take a look at any time and invite members of the public to come. It's truly phenomenal. Where Tierra del Sol provides professional art training and exhibition resources to create opportunities for individuals with disabilities, they help them develop art careers. It's an amazing program that provides each artist materials, space, and guidance to develop and express his or her own point of view, and in so doing, enter a visual dialogue in the shared language of the visual arts. Something that crosses disabilities, crosses intellectual abilities is something that we all have. Tierra del Sol artists have exhibited their work nationally, internationally at venues such as the Smithsonian and the Kennedy Center in Washington, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, to name just a few, and of course my office to put on that august list. So you can understand why I'm honored to join such an illustrious group of galleries around the world. Now, Mariah Jones has orchestrated this exhibition, and I want to make a special mention of her effort and the time that she took to come to both of my offices to put up all of this wonderful art for all of you to see and enjoy. For years, Tierra del Sol has inspired me as it has made our community a better place through its leadership and unwavering commitment to increasing opportunity for people with disabilities. Before we join in congratulating Tierra del Sol for their work, I wanted to be sure that you heard from two of the artists whose work is on display in my office upstairs. Sarkis Kushkerkian, and I apologize, Sarkis, if I mispronounced your name, and Trina Kirkman. I'd like to get both of you to speak. Sarkis first, and I wonder if we can get you the microphone, if you can.
Don't we have a microphone?
A handheld mic for?
Yeah, don't we have a, here it comes.
Great.
And Mr. Bloomingfield, I do have members on the queue, so I'll call on them right after, or would you like for them to speak now?
Well, why don't we have Sarkis speak and the artist speak, and then we'll have members on the queue.
Fine. Good morning, sir.
I like the Tierra del Sol that give me a opportunity to improve my skill. And I was a little teenager. I was dream is my coming to teen artist. That Tierra del Sol is gave me this chance to come my dream. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now Trina Kirkman. Yeah, you're over here. Do you want to stand right up here, Trina?
I am Duna. I am the artist I like. Do you paint flowers? When do you paint? I like. Have people to see. I like to be in the show and of all work of my art make to me to help. Thank you of this time to serve my art.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
And now we could go to the members.
If we could go to Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Bob, for bringing in Tierra del Sol. Let me just say a thing about Bob, because I remember vividly when we served in the legislature, colleagues, how difficult the budget deficit was for the state of California. We were facing $26 billion deficit. And in the middle of all of that, there had to be some very difficult choices. But where Bob hung tough was with respect to the development disabled and elder care facilities. And it was really a hard-fought fight. So thank you, Bob, for your leadership there and for making the state of California get to a place where we're finally, hopefully, in a place where we can go ahead and start talking about the reinvestment that we deservedly need for these facilities. Tierra del Sol is a tremendous facility. We are really blessed in the San Fernando Valley to have Tierra del Sol be really a hallmark for being a leader in making sure that we are doing all that we can for those adults and youth with these developmental challenges. Some facts that you may or may not know about Tierra del Sol: they help more than 640 people across Los Angeles County overcome cognitive, physical, emotional, behavioral challenges resulting from developmental disabilities. They also have a very exciting program called Nexus, where they are helping transition high school age youth with developmental disabilities into higher education. The overall average GPA for these folks in this program, 3.26. Can you imagine that, folks? Tierra del Sol is doing that for not just students, but these very special people. And so it's a tremendous asset that we have in the San Fernando Valley. It resides in the great 7th Council District, but it's something that we all share and are very proud of. And I'm very excited to call you all our neighbor. In addition to all of the work that they do, they are a tremendous partner in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. They open up their facility not just for the Harvest Festival, but they open it up to the Sunland Tujunga Neighborhood Council. I'm sorry, the Shadow Hills Properties Owners Association. They open it up to just about anybody who wants to come, and Mr. Kokorian remembers this, who wants to utilize the facility. And it's more than just an organization. It's a fantastic neighbor. And so I'm really excited to call you all a partner. Thank you very much for your partnership with Mr. Buscaino and I in the Buddy Walk. It's something that we want to do again and again and again. And it's the first time that we've had that in Los Angeles City Hall. And we continue to have a tremendous relationship. Thank you so much for your leadership and for your investment in Los Angeles and these special people. Thank you.
Mitchell Englander, and thank you, Mr. Fuentes.
I don't speak often on presentations, but I felt compelled to stand with you in everything that you're doing, not only with Tierra del Sol, but all the organizations, Valley Village, New Horizons, that are providing such an important program and services for those most vulnerable in our society. It was in 1969 that one of the most important leaders in the state of California passed the Latterman Act, Frank Latterman. It will forever change what we do as people and caring for others. One of the most remarkable men that ever lived, I think, in California, quite frankly. It was the Latterman Act that said those with developmental disabilities should live just like those without them, that we should not institutionalize people. We should house them within our community and care for them as such. I don't share my life story often, but that's where I was most touched. Before I ran for office, I didn't know about these services. I didn't know about Tierra del Sol. I didn't know about Valley Village. I certainly didn't know about New Horizons, which was right around the block from my home. And I had the opportunity, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, to go tour New Horizons, and I was torn up. I left. I went home crying that afternoon because it was right after my sister died in my arms, and I took care of her for 10 years. And I didn't know that there was such organizations like Tierra del Sol, like New Horizons, that could have helped. And she had developmental disabilities, and I had no idea. And I found out later that Tierra del Sol and New Horizons and Valley Village were the best kept secrets in Los Angeles, unfortunately. And we've got to do more to let people know that the group homes, the services that you all offer are incredible. You're doing God's work. You're not just providing shelter. You're providing a life and an opportunity for people to live a life they otherwise wouldn't. And my hat's off to you, Bob, as well, as protecting that funding when you were in Sacramento. It's so critically important that people get engaged. I'm on the board now of New Horizons in my sister's name, and doing everything that I can to ensure that we do more, and we need to do more. The funds are drying up, and we're relying less with our organizations on government and more on philanthropic care than ever before. And so I really do appreciate that, that you're here today and that you're here tomorrow and that we want to make sure you're here for the future. So God bless you for everything you guys do. Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield?
Well, I appreciate both my colleagues' words. And toward that end, we don't want Tierra to be the best kept secret. We want everyone to know about Tierra, everyone to appreciate the work that you do, and really to spread the word about it. And so in that vein, we have a certificate signed by all the members of the LA City Council. So I'd like to present it to you. Send it to you. And I also have individually certificates, which we'll do in the back afterwards for each one of you. We have a certificate, but this is a certificate for the whole organization. So if you would just please accept this small token from the City of Los Angeles to make sure everybody knows about this wonderful organization. So
I'm not here to take this to Los Angeles. I don't have film studies to drive a car, okay?
It's okay. That's okay. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, and congratulations to you all. Mr. Labange, before I go to you, or as I'm going to you, we're going to take up item 4, which was held by one card, John Walsh, on item 4. Mr. Walsh on item 4.
Ma'am, if you'd like to exit through here. Just right through here. Just right over here.
Yes.
Thank you. And just follow them down to the right. You're going to go through that door there at the end. Hold on, Mr. Walsh.
Let's give them one more round of applause, if you would. Thank you all.
They're on their way to the free buffet at taxpayers' expense in the back room. John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org or J. Walsh Confidential, or tweeting at Hollywood Dems with 2 Ds in the middle. Okay, this concerns another hearing protest concerning the improvement. That generally means you're going to go to LED lighting and maintenance on Van Alden Avenue and Malden Street in that lighting district. It continues the hearing. We think everyone deserves a hearing. If they don't think they should pay for it, whether it's going to improve their property or not, the value of their property. We consider this process fairly well done. In fact, actually well done by the City Council. Remember, I'm not up here to attack you every time I get up, only when it's worthy of an attack. Congratulations. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay, thank you. Let's prepare to vote on this. Madam Clerk, open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, now, Mr. Labange, get your people together. We're going to quickly go to item 13. We have one card, John Reed. John Reed, item 13. If you come forward, sir. Yes, sir.
I thought the planning department was going to make a presentation first.
Oh, it's you.
It's
you
me.
have your 2 minutes.
I have my 2 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is John Reed with Reed Architectural Group. I'm here to discuss a project at 2011 Berry Avenue. I've had passed out 4 pages. This project is a lot that's on Berry Avenue that's located within a half a mile from New Bundy Expo Station that's under construction now. There are 5 zones located within 500 feet. On the next page, you'll see that this whole block was subdivided into 5 lots in 1901. After 1901, these lots were subdivided into 23 lots. You go to the next page, and this particular property is identified in yellow. This parcel's double the size of any parcel on the block. And what the intent of our project is to be consistent with the general plan. All the other lots are either substandard in width or have been cut by deed. So what we wanted to do was change the zone in this project so it would conform to the general plan and not request variances to subdivide it into 2 separate parcels. We had a West Los Angeles Planning Commission hearing, which I think sort of confused some of the facts regarding whether or not this project was consistent. It is consistent. We went to the Plum Committee. There were some questions regarding why 4 two-story houses that are 30 feet in height that are conforming with the zone, that could be conditions with Q conditions that really wouldn't fit into the neighborhood. So thank you for your time, and I'm here to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reed. We now defer to Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. I want to thank John for his testimony. John is an amazing leader in my district on planning issues in particular. I appreciate his testimony, although he and I are on different pages on this one. This wasn't the easiest planning issue I've had before me, but this is a situation where the applicant is seeking a zone change in an R2 neighborhood in order to effectively implement the small lot subdivision ordinance in that area. It would change the zoning on that particular block, and the small lot subdivision ordinance as drafted intentionally excluded R1 and R2 zones. West LA is desperately in need of a community plan update, which I'm seeking, and until then I'd like to hold the line on zone changes. So I'm respectfully asking that the Council today deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the West Los Angeles Area Planning Commission to deny the requested zone change. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. President, that motion would need a seconder.
Okay, Mr. Labange, and also Mr. Weezer.
Move that and the second on that as well, so that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, let's prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, let's move on to Mr. Tom Labange of the Great Fourth District.
Good morning, Mr. President. We have a very distinguished group of students from the University of Applied Science, Kiel, Germany, on their 4th trip here to Los Angeles every year. Give them a big hand of welcome right now.
Welcome.
And with me here is Howard Gluck, who's one of our top city attorneys, who every year shepherds this program. And what you would want to know, and members know, that from time to time we do have distinguished groups of students, visitors, and the like who come here to learn about us and Los Angeles, especially our city attorney's office, which is one of the big offices in the country. And Howard, if you could just give a little overview, and we will make presentations in the press room later.
Okay, I won't speak long. Attorneys don't speak for a long time. It just seems that way. This delegation today includes 17 people. We have a visiting judge, 3 professors, and 13 students. The university provides a bachelor's degree program and also has a master's program. It is located in southwest Germany. It was founded in 1971, and they also have a special interest in public administration and particularly in the criminal justice system, which is part of the tour. That includes going to the criminal courts building, the criminal justice center, and basically they want to be exposed to municipal government also. It's a 2-day program that they are here for, and I'm honored to help explain the criminal justice system to them and shepherd them on their tour, which they look forward to every year. They particularly asked for a visit from Council Member Labange, whose staff is always kind in accommodating them, and they look forward to their stay here and the kind welcome from the City Council.
But what's so important, Howard, is that you take your time as a city attorney, extra time, to share the knowledge to make the world smaller. So give Howard Gluck a big hand, city attorney, witnessed by Caprice Maddox. And right here, we have a special representative of the faculty. And I want to say Dieter Stange, but it's not Dieter Stange. I want to say it correctly.
Uwe Bisbard.
Uwe Bisbard. Please welcome for some remarks. Uwe.
Thank you. Just a few words. I have to thank that we have the opportunity to visit Los Angeles City Administration more or less every year since 2010, and my special thanks are going to Howard Gluck, who always provide us with a very, very interesting, informative agenda, so we really get some more information and a good knowledge about the law system and about city administration here in Los Angeles. Thanks a lot.
Well,
thank you.
Dankeschön, Mr. President. We thank you. This is a great opportunity. Again, people coming to our city to learn from our attorneys, etc. And I look at the young deputies around here. Get involved with the Sister City program. Reach out. The world's getting smaller, and contribute to that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome to all of you, and thank you, Mr. Labange.
Thank you.
Let's give him one more round of applause. Okay, I'm going to take up one item, and then Mr. Parks, I'm going to defer to you on your item, so if you can get your folk together. But right now we're going to do item 15, and I have a card from Mr. Walsh and Herman. So if you could please come forward. Mr. Herman.
John Walsh,
Mr. Walsh,
blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, tweeting at Hollywood Dems. And this is our old friend Reap, the landlord at 809 West 65th Street, wouldn't do the repairs, so he's now paying, the people who live there are now paying their rent to the city, not to the landlord. Also 201 East 45th Street and 6137 East Toltec Way. You're doing a good job on Reap. I'm not going to whine and say you're doing. I'm not that way. When you do a good job, I tell you do a good job. It's not that often, but on Reap, you continue to do a good job. And everyone out there, if you have, if your landlord refuses to make repairs, go to Reap. He'll make the repairs, or he won't get his rent. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay, Mr. Herman.
Are we having an issue here with widespread discrimination? Is this a crusade against discrimination in housing? What is your point of view of this subject when it comes to the owners have corrected for citations under REAP violations and provided proof of compliance? If this compliance is the best way to create habitability for us all, then let's keep the program. If not, then why such widespread discrimination when it comes to housing? This housing of discrimination is an extortion, embezzlement, if these corrections are not done in the ample time as suggested. Peace to you with that camera. 1 minute.
Okay, let's prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, Mr. Parks, how would you like to proceed, sir?
I'd like to ask the superintendent to come up at this time. And colleagues, what we have today is the superintendent was kind enough to come to our committee and discuss the status of schools in the Los Angeles area. This committee had spent most of its time since its creation dealing with neighborhood issues, and we found that there was a void in addressing educational issues, and so we thought it'd be important to have him come over and give an overview of what's going on in the school district. He's brought for you a document, which all of you should have, that actually identifies a number of goals and achievements by council districts so that you're aware of graduation rates and a variety of things so you can follow his presentation. He was very informative with the committee and covered a number of things that had been in the news that gave insight, such as the current status of API scores, also dealt with the issue of removal of teachers, the iPad controversy or tablets. Also, he dealt with special education, charter school issues, and then there's two most recent that came out that dealt with the study that recently came out about the SAT scores, which I asked him today would he just comment on. He says very controversial, but it's brand new. And then also if he could comment on the recent determination by the board to add a liaison position for the replacement for Mrs. Lamont while they're going through election. I'd like to ask if one of the other members of Ian would like to make a comment before the superintendent speaks. Okay. So, Mr. Superintendent, you're on.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, President Wesson and distinguished members of the council. I really appreciate you inviting me to your chambers so that I could share with you our successes and our growth and our challenges in the nation's second largest school system. Just a point of privilege, so many of you around this table have supported LAUSD, not only in your current position, but also as previous lawmakers and as previous policymakers, and it is deeply, deeply appreciated. I'll move through the presentation quickly. People don't like to be talked through a PowerPoint, and then I'll be glad to answer questions and make the comments, for example, that Councilmember Parks has asked me to make. So if they would, there we go. You have for you just a brief overview. I know most of you know this. LA is an incredibly large, amazingly diverse school system. We have approximately 800,000 students from pre-K, where we run a large pre-K program, through adult education, where we run an adult education program. More than 3/4 of our youth live in circumstances of poverty and peril. Almost a third of our students are currently language learners. Our Latino youth are the greatest percentage of our population. Our African American, our white, and our Asian make up the remainder of the largest portions of the population. We have more than 92 languages spoken in LAUSD, and we translate everything every day into 8 languages. We have more square footage, serve more meals, drive more roads than any other industry west of the Mississippi, so that we can provide our youth with the opportunity for every single one of them to graduate college and workforce ready. The next document lists, for example, so you can get a sense of all of the variety of schools that our students go to school in. We have more than 1,300 individual facilities. I think most of you are aware that we just completed the nation's largest public works program and built 131 new school campuses, each one of them containing many of them more than 2 to 3 individual schools on those campuses. And LAUSD has ended forever the situation where students did not get a full year of school. And so overcrowding has finally been addressed, and the next $7 billion in bonds now works to refurbish the buildings that were not touched during the building program. More than 60,000 staff have the privilege of serving the youth of this city. I know that you all know your individual councilmanic districts, but for your edification, I placed the school board districts so that you can get a sense of which one of the council districts overlap inside of the various school board districts, and that map there provides that information for you. LAUSD has witnessed in the past 5 years significant and in some cases dramatic improvement in student achievement, the growth of student achievement, the decline of serious discipline matters, and the pacing of the improvement being the #1 of the urbans in the country. And we did that, as you know, because you had the same experience in punishing economic circumstances. So before I celebrate this, I would want to say this happened because people worked incredibly, incredibly hard. We lost 8,000 jobs during the Great Recession, and we still had to educate every student who came to school. And we lost millions and millions of dollars, $2.7 billion to be exact, in our budget, and yet achievement continued to go up in every category. That is because of, as I said before, all of your support, and it is also because of the amazing employees of LA. When we came to LAUSD, myself as the superintendent, we sat down with the team and we were very clear that we had a single goal. We lift youth out of poverty. We are not confused about our mission. And we did that by setting targets and moving forward in the areas for students. I'm going to review the progress on those targets with you, and as was I requested, each one of these contains a little chart on the side which provides individual council district movement against the whole of LAUSD. So when you see graduation rate, this is the one that measures students who enter in 9th grade and graduate 4 years later. Many students graduate in 5 years, and still others graduate in 6 years. We have students with lots of special needs. We have students whose lives get interrupted. So our graduation rate in LAUSD is higher, but we always measure the 4-year growth. And as you can see, it's at its highest that it has ever been. We won't be satisfied till it's 100%, but we are quite proud of the improvement that has taken place in the past 4 years, more than a 10-point increase for our students. And then, of course, broken down. So if you look at Council District 1, that shows the year-to-year improvement of that particular district as well. The next takes a look at what we call the A through G rate. As a reminder, A through G are the courses designated for a student to graduate that is considered UC eligible if you get a C or better in those courses. This doesn't track the A through G. This is the percentage of students who are on track to graduate. So students do graduate A through G at a higher level, but we always track the percentage at the beginning of a year who are on track, meaning they wouldn't need summer school, they wouldn't need extra courses. We do provide those items. Our goal is 100% of students, and until just a few years ago, LAUSD left A through G requirements as an option. Today, every single student has a board policy. I know Council Member Martinez was part of the board at the time when we said that every student will have the right to an A through G diploma. And so, as of today, all students are taking the A through G course curriculum. It's very important. These next pieces of data were from the California Standards Test. As you know, those tests are no longer being given. And this was the last available data that we had. And we have moved in each of the cases at watching, we separate elementary from secondary, As a district, K-12, our results are the highest in every grade level that they've ever been in English language arts and math, and for every subgroup of students. So if you take a look at the percent of proficient or advanced, while basic is, quote, a passing score at the state, we are always focused on proficient and advanced. We can track the growth of our elementary English language arts, and you can do the same across the variety of councilmanic districts. And then we break out secondary. And again, the improvement of those data points, and then across by the various councilmanic districts as well. Mathematics, again, elementary and secondary, continues to show improvement, and it also continues at the elementary level of showing our our proficient and our advanced. And one of the things I would note is there are certain council districts where we have math scores that are substantially higher than the district average. We learn from those districts. We learn from the schools in those districts. What we know is that students generally in LA all live in circumstances of impact, and if any can do it, all can do it. And it's a very, very hopeful issue for us. At secondary, this is the course that is tracked that is not algebra or geometry or algebra 2 or trigonometry. This is the secondary math course. You have different charts for those courses as well. And this test also has ended and has been phased out as well. We track third grade for a very specific reason. Third grade is the grade for which, if you remembered when you looked back at the elementary, you saw numbers in the 60s and in the 70s. But reading at grade level at third grade is the most important marker of future success. That's why we track third grade, and we begin very serious interventions at that point so that by the end of elementary school, students are on track at proficiency at their grade level. Algebra proficiency for first-time algebra takers are included in this. This doesn't include students who are taking algebra in middle school and are already passing that. This is algebra in 9th grade. We have many, many more students who have already completed algebra and passed algebra when they finish before they actually enter high school. You know that a large portion of our students are learning English. A large portion of our students are not proficient currently in English. And while we have an amazing celebration of that language diversity, we're very, very cognizant of the fact that being proficient in English is very important for students. It's very important to access courses later on. So we track the percentage of students meeting what we call the AMAO1 and the percentage of students who have not been reclassified in 5 years. So the very first one is the first threshold for reclassification. We've doubled the rate of reclassification in the last 2 years, something that has long been needed in LAUSD. One of the steps of doing that is making sure you can pass this particular test. We also track long-term language learning. This is one of the very few charts you want to see go down over time, because it means that if this is going down, we're increasing the number of students who are not a long-term language learner. They are getting reclassified as a proficient learner. And at the bottom, we also track the percentage of students that spend at least 80% of their day in the general education program as a student with special needs. IEPs certainly determine the growth of students and their programs, but we opt to make sure students have at least 2/3 of their day, every day, in the general education program. This is a very, very, very successful model, and we're very proud of that for those students. We do track things other than academics. You can't learn if you're not in school. Attendance is an enormous issue. So this tracks the percentage of students who come to school 96% of the time or more. We chose a very high level because it matters enormously for students, and our attendance is at its highest for our students. Students are safest when they're with us. Obviously, learning happens when they're with us, and we put a great emphasis on having students be with us. And likewise, we also track the attendance of staff. Students have a deep relationship with their teachers and their leadership, and if they're not there, they're not likely to be successful either. So we also track the percentage of staff who come to school 96% of the time or greater. We try to hold ourselves to the same level as we ask our students to do. Parent engagement. This is a piece that we've recently begun to track and put a lot of energy in, as you can see. So this is the percentage of parents who tell us on our annual survey that they are informed through their teacher about their child's progress. We put a great deal of emphasis on outreach, and we have seen a huge increase in that. We're actually very, very proud of that. And the parent participation in the school survey has certainly grown. It's the chart I am looking forward to seeing the greatest amount of improvement in. We know that parents participate in school, but when they tell us how school is going, this is a very important piece of data. So anytime I can use a venue like this to tell parents that it's important that one time a year you fill out the survey about how you think your child's doing in school and how well we're doing for you in school, it really matters. We pay a great deal of attention to that. I want to pause for a moment and spend maybe a little bit longer on this slide than any other slide because it is a stunning story about LAUSD. I'll be very clear that when I became superintendent, I was told LAUSD had a serious dropout problem and that students, but particularly young men of color, were dropping out at very large proportions. So I visited our high schools and I spent time in schools. And I didn't quite see it that way, actually, at all. So I tried to understand what was taking place, and what we did is we wanted to understand how many times a student was sent out of school by us. And when I came, we had almost 60,000 days lost to suspensions, and we began to track this issue. And what we said to ourselves was, let's try to understand who's being suspended and what they're being suspended for. And what we found out was that overwhelmingly, a tiny fraction of suspensions were for serious misconduct. You know, in California, if you make a grievous error, you bring a weapon to school, you do drugs, you are going to be suspended and expelled from school. The overwhelming majority were not that at all. So we dug up every single suspension notice and tried to understand what they were. And by and large, the supermajority of them were for this offense called willful defiance. And of willful defiance, the group of students suspended the most were young black men in LAUSD. Now, they make up less than 10% of the population and were 9 times more likely to be suspended for that event than any other group of student. That's what we call a disproportionality. They were being suspended disproportionately at a higher rate than any other student. I came to the Board of Education, who said unanimously, this cannot continue. And we began to track it, and then we came to the board and said, I really want to understand, what do you mean by willful defiance? So we went through every suspension, and they were not for things like standing up and swearing and cussing out a teacher, threatening. No, the suspension notices read things like failure to bring your books to school, not having your equipment in the classroom. So that's not willful defiance, that's adolescence. We can correct that. Willful defiance was, as we found out, a category used most likely inappropriately. So the board supported a policy that said no more. Now you're watching that policy take place around California and around the country. So not shockingly, we went from 60,000 suspensions to 12,000, and then this year we'll be at 11,000. And students stayed in school, and achievement and attendance went up dramatically, but particularly for the group of students in our community, in school community, who were being suspended the most, our young black men. And when I go to the last of this data and talk about the national assessment of education progress, you will see that LA is the #1 urban district in the country with the greatest growth for that group of students. In other words, when you stay with us, you learn. We were pushing students out. They weren't dropping out. And we've stopped that entirely. And I'm incredibly proud of the work that went into this. School safety, we track that. This is the percentage of students who tell us they feel safe on school grounds. We want it always to be 100%. It's pretty astonishingly high and continues to get better, and we're very proud of that. The last 2 data points, and then I'll be glad to answer questions, and Councilmember Parks asked me to make a comment on a few things. AP exams matter enormously. These are the advanced placement exams that are given across the entire United States. Students take them. 3 data points worth taking a look at. Our enrollment at high school has declined. There are fewer high school students. Generally, enrollment has declined. We've had fewer kids born. But the percentage and the enrollment in AP courses has actually increased during the exact same time. While we have fewer high school students, more of them are taking AP courses, and more of them are doing better. AP matters. As you can see, we went from 29,000 to 44,000 tests taken, and students take those tests. That's voluntary. They take the course. We help students pay for that who struggle economically. But if you get a 3, 4, or 5 on that test, that counts as a college course, and it helps reduce the cost of college. There's a huge economic benefit to students who walk out with multiple APs under their belt with 3, 4s, and 5s. So we have a large amount of effort in helping students be successful in AP. If you take a look at API, which is a California Academic Performance Index, it's the overall measure. It takes into all of your tests rolled up into one, and you get a single score. 800 is considered very good. It can go to 1,000. It is suspended as of now as we move to the new testing platform. But if we take a look at the growth compared to all of the other urbans, the 2012 API growth, no one surpassed LAUSD. And when we add the 2013 on top of that, only San Diego has a total that has eclipsed us. We're happy for them. We will do and outpace them the next time. But it does give you a sense of where we are in the state. As you can see, last year API went down for the state of California. It went up for LAUSD. I think you know the math. If LAUSD goes up, almost always the state goes up. To have the state going down and LAUSD going up is an astonishing trajectory of improvement for this district. I apologize, a lot of data on one slide. I'll just explain it. You can read it a little bit later. What we want to show you, these are the trends since 2003 to 2013 for NAEP scores. We have subgroups that have struggled, and we have subgroups that have had astonishing success. NAEP is the gold standard in the country. It's given across every state, and it's the national comparison. Overall, you can see that LA has gone up every single year, and LA is one of the large urbans that gets individual results. Students in poverty, every single year. African American growth, fantastic. Students who declare themselves as white or Anglo, Hispanic, also very, very good. Students as language learners, we have room to grow there. That's why we track reclassification very, very carefully. Subgroup data is important. It's given in grades 4 and it's given in grades 8 in English, language arts, and mathematics. Here you get a snapshot of grade 8. This gives you a sense of the districts across the country from 03 to 13. So in 8th grade reading, LA led the nation, tied with Atlanta. And in 4th grade reading, LA over the same period of time was 3rd, the District of Columbia, and Atlanta being 2nd and 1st. From the last iteration of NAEP to this one, it's given every other year. Actually, LA was 1st in the nation in both those categories. Mathematics, very strong performance. I want to note first in the nation for our African American youth and our youth in poverty. Obviously, this is data that we're very, very proud of. And in 8th grade, again, very similar trend. Also, similar work ahead of us with our language learners. And this provides you an example of the change in math scores, LA outpacing every other large urban in the country, and LA behind DC and Chicago in 4th grade. You can see the rate of our change and the comparative does give us pause to be proud, but not satisfied, because we have a great deal of work ahead of us in that. Obviously, we can produce additional information if you like that can provide more detail, and I'd be glad to spend whatever time you wish. I know you have a busy meeting answering any questions you might have. I was also asked to comment on a few of them when we begin. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you very much, and we do have a few members that would like to chat with you or say a few things, starting with Mr. Labange.
First, I want to thank Mr. Parks for this motion, an invitation here. Mr. Deasy, thank you for what you do. I'm proud to stand here along with Mr. Buscaino, San Pedro High School, Mr. Cedillo, Roosevelt High School, Mr. Englander, El Camino High School, Mr. Fuentes, San Fernando High School, Mr. Koretz, Hamilton High School, Mr. Kokorian, Cleveland High School, and Miss Martinez, San Fernando High School. I was worried you only had 7 votes. Then I forgot to...
I worry about that all the time, sir.
I forgot. Marshall High School. So you got 8 votes. You got 8 votes. I was worried for a second. School is so important in so many ways. I was at Vine Street Elementary School today speaking to kindergartners and the connection there. What made a difference there at Vine Street is that principal and the staff want us there. Yeah. That's a value that is not shared universally. A lot of schools in my district, they want us there, whether it's my deputies or me, to help in any which way we can. And some are a little shy or not as encouraging. Collaboration is our key to success in the future. I did want to also mention some things on the joint use. Very important. I have a motion here that I want to act on to have a joint use committee. The people of Los Angeles, whether they're wherever, but Los Angeles pay for the schools, pay for the city, pay for the county, and joint use is so important on that. I'll talk to and send you a note on that. Work source, jobs, is so important. Do they still have a 4-4 program in high school?
Yes, sir.
Good, so those are important to look on there. Here's a tough question, members. We'll be dealing with livable wage and also increasing the minimum wage. Do we have a youth wage that young people can get jobs at 15 and 16 that's different? That's a question that we should get studied and ask upon. Also, I want to say shops and industrial arts. What's happened to that program?
This is a gigantic resurgence. We call this linked learning, where students are getting career experience and job experience in school. Right. The current president, I think the title is pro tem. I am very sorry I made a mistake on that, of the Senate. Mr. Steinberg has actually put out and has led the charge on a very competitive grant. We think LAUSD is the most competitive to win this money, which will expand this program across LA.
Right. I went to Saturday skills class. Santiago Jackson was the teacher, who's a retired superintendent on Grand Avenue. I went to West Valley Occupation, and I got 15 credits for that. I got A's in industrial arts and A's in athletics, and I think that's what got me here today, because the discipline of all those studies that are there. Athletics, I think, members, we should look to fundraising. Another city in the country is working in partnership with their professional teams. It's not just the varsity we should be concerned about, because varsity players usually make it, but the B and C team and Title IX sports, so important. That's a concept. So we should reach out to our professional teams and help to fund, to have that support. Arts, dance, and music. The greatest thing in this city used to be the Locke High School Marching Band, the Saints, 177 strong. getting the marching bands back. I'm proud of Hollywood High School and all the work that they're doing trying to build their band again. That's so important for community.
You know that we are the nation's envy in the all-city marching band.
Oh, I got that. But each school should have it because I think it's powerful. Also, I love your display on parental engagement. It's so important to get parents involved and make it easy. Make sure they have a time. They had I went by one school, and their open house is like from 4:30 to 6:30. Several parents are still working. I think we got to figure that out even on Saturday. I do a thing called Love a Library where I get school buses, and we bring people from schools and their parents to the Central Library for that partnership. I'll finish up real quick. School safety is so important. Do you still do monthly earthquake drills?
It's required by law.
Monthly earthquake drills.
So I want to you give me the opportunity to say something about safety. I just want to give me 1 second. I want to say this to the council. I've worked in many cities. I have never, ever enjoyed the relationship that we have with LAPD. It's remarkable. Our police force is LAUSD PD, phenomenal people. It is a seamless relationship, and we are very, very proud of it and thankful for it.
Well, that's good. In the fire department and all that, because the earthquake will come.
Look at your time, way over.
I know I'm way over, but I went to this school system. And
way over, though, Mr. Labange.
So I'm way over. I got to go to the attendance office. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got to come get a pass. Okay, Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you. The only thing that Mr. Labange left out, Mr. Labange, information is knowledge and knowledge is power. Isn't that right? That's right. So I said I would never say that. If elected, I'm sorry I did. Mr. Superintendent, thank you so much for being here today. I got to tell you, Mr. Parks, thank you for bringing this motion forward. I just had one of those sort of aha moments where I'm wondering out loud, why haven't we ever done this before? Why isn't that we've looked at data in a sort of council-specific way to figure out how it is that we can help the school district and how you all can help us in this partnership? When we served in the legislature, I think Mr. Blumenfield and some of my colleagues, Mr. Price, will remember this, we kicked around the idea of formalizing a youth impact statement. Yep. Because everything that government does, whether it's a school board, whether it's a county, whether it's a city, every agency ought to be really considering what it is that our actions do to impact the success of our youth. And so I think we're in a very exciting time because federally there's that acknowledgement that we've got to start moving people from cradle to career. And that, I think, necessitates a lot of information and a lot of data, which is to say that what you've given us here, I think, is a real opportunity for us to be better partners with you. So I wonder out loud, colleagues, if we shouldn't be considering how it is that we structure, for example, our block grant funding and making sure that we target the impacts that could bring to bear on some of the needs. The slides that I think impacted me the most, Mr. Superintendent, is the sort of real need to reinforce the long-term language learners in particular districts like mine that I think are trailing the rest of the city. And so I think out loud that if we were able to really marshal our resources and provide better linkages here, we may be able to have more of an impact. And so it wouldn't be for Mr. Parks' motion for me to have sort of just had that revelation right now. I think there are other things that we can be doing, and one that I would sort of just put on your radar screen is, as Chair of Energy and the Environment, I have heard from some of my 66 schools in my council district that there are things that we could be doing better to sort of help. For example, there's these fantastic projects that I think help educate young people, especially in impacted communities like mine where we have type 2 diabetes crisis levels. There's roadblocks in trying to get these sort of gardening opportunities, largely because the soil testing is so expensive, for example. And so I think there's ways for us to be able to use our utility and maybe come up with a soil test kit in a box to better facilitate what it is that you all need from a liability perspective and using our resources so that we can be more effective together. And that's just one very small example, but I'm hoping that you can help me understand and the council, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that you think that we can be doing to partner better, to facilitate your mission and obviously ours to make sure that our youth are successful?
So first off, I want to speak for my board. We feel very supported by the council, and I thank you for that. I think the notion of how do we increase joint use is really highly important. We've just built a great number of facilities. While they're used almost 24 hours a day, there is plenty of opportunity for continued joint use. I think number two, youth workforce development, hugely important. If we're going to lift youth out of poverty, viable employment is part of that. I know you work and think about their parents, but youth force employment is a very big issue that I think that would be good for us to think through together about that. And lastly, I know you know this in particular as well as other members who have served in Sacramento. When we can be united in legislation that serves youth and their rights, it's a very powerful thing for the state to have to say, how could we say no to LA? And so that united piece around legislation that serves them best is very helpful.
The last thing, Mr. President, and I'll sit down here, is I said this to you privately, Mr. Superintendent, I'll say it to you publicly. Thank you for your decision to stay with LAUSD. You've been a real force for us, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good remarks there, Mr. Fuentes. Mr. Bloomfield.
Thank you, and I'll start where Mr. Fuentes ended by thanking you again for staying with us. You do great work, and we really appreciate the work, and I'm glad you feel supported because you are supported, and we want, as a group, to be supportive.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a bit of a data geek, so I enjoy looking at this stuff, and I encourage you to put as much data that you can online, and we're going through a whole open data movement here in the city, and as we sort of cross-reference this data, I think a lot of useful things will come out of it. Just like you mentioned with the willful defiance issue, such an important issue that you were able to get to. A lot of folks, around the issues of boys and men of color were pushing for it, and you were able to look at the data and realize it and make that policy change, which is making a difference. And you did it from both the good policy, but also as a data-driven option. So that's great. I had sort of one narrow question and sort of two more broad ones. The narrow question is just on the document, when you're talking about districts, are you referring to where the child lives or the schools that are in that district?
No, we're referring to the schools in that district.
Okay.
So as you know, students have a tremendous amount of choice in LAUSD.
Right.
This is not resident, this is attendance.
Yeah, that's just an important,
Yes.
That's what I assumed it was, but I wasn't sure.
Yes.
And
it's a great point.
It might also be interesting if the data is easily manipulated to see it based on where people live as well.
Yep, we can do that.
And that could be, cross-referencing those could be very illuminative.
Okay.
The two broad issues, one was sort of how we can be supportive, and it's following up on that question. Not only you mentioned the three different areas, but I would love to see a way where we formalize that process, where we're dialoguing more. All of us around here, when we talk to our constituents, they don't know government, which level of government. Education is always that top issue or one of the top issues, and we want to be there, and I would love to figure out a formal process for that. And the third broad question is the local control funding formula. How, that is now being implemented now, and I imagine it's going to change some of these numbers dramatically.
Yes.
And wanted to get your sense, I have my guesses, but of how that is going to impact the trends that you're seeing here.
I don't think you and those listening can underestimate the profound change that's taking place and is about to come as a result of this. It's arguably, in education, probably the single greatest policy change in over 40 years in the state of California.
Since Serrano, right?
Exactly. And while I would be glad to come back and do a deeper dive if you would like that, but fundamentally, money is coming to districts from the pot. The pot is determined by formula, but how it comes to districts is now based upon a certain amount for every single student, and then additional amounts based on the fact that the number of students you have who live in circumstances of poverty, who don't speak English as their first language proficiently yet, or who are in foster care. And then further, even greater money comes to districts based on the percentages of those students, populations I just spoke about, that are above 55%. So there's a concentration. LA meets all of those categories, and we'll see over the next 7 years increased funding to target for those students. We're in the process now of taking large-scale community input to bring to the board the best set of recommendations for those investments. if there was ever a time for community involvement, this is the time around that.
Great, thank you. What you do is not just on behalf of all the students that are in my district and in the city, but my own kids depend on you. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Koretz from Hamilton High School, a Yankee.
Mr. President. First, I'll acknowledge, as everybody else, the great accomplishments that LAUSD has made during your tenure. And I want to echo what Mr. Fuentes said. I think that with English language learners, focusing on other things before they become fluent and literate almost doesn't make sense. Testing them, teaching them, it's all going to be weak. So anything I can do to encourage you to put more emphasis on that until they're fluent and then bring in more things, I always thought that made sense.
It does.
Now, I have to ask you about one pet peeve of mine, and the
Yes.
one thing I don't like about your administration as I've watched it.
Yes.
I heard you speak when you first got appointed, and you said, I want LAUSD to be a lean, mean firing machine.
Yes.
And I understand the positive side of that in that there were some bad teachers, and obviously finding them and removing them from the classroom I think makes sense. But I think you've been overly aggressive and dealt with teachers in the opposite way of the way you've dealt with students being suspended, as in removing them for some pretty minor things, especially in terms of substitutes that I've known. I can give you one example. I know a substitute who was written up for something as innocuous, and this sounds unbelievable, but it's there on his record, and he was actually fired for a couple things like this. A principal went into his room when he was teaching a kindergarten class and wrote him up because he was teaching the kids to count while they were in their seats rather than on the carpet. The most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And that kind of thing only exists because of the tone that I think you've set. It seems like, especially with subs, there's an effort to fire them for whatever pretense can be found. I'm assuming so there's room for laid-off full-time teachers to get those positions. But it just seems absolutely absurd, and I wonder how you can justify that.
So I appreciate it. I think most of your facts are inaccurate, however. One is that substitutes are not employees that are subject to the same discipline codes as our teachers under the state law.
Right.
Second of all is I can't speak to an individual item because I don't know the person, don't know if that happened or did not happen. When people are disciplined, there is a process for having them disciplined, which is contained both in Ed Code and also in our teacher's contract. But overall, I would say it's a privilege to teach the youth of LAUSD, and one that we don't take lightly. And if you're not competent or you're going to harm a child, I'm not going to let you near my kids. Period. The right of youth to be in front of a very effective teacher every single day is not something we take lightly. I am humbled and amazed by the teaching force. And we don't sit around any longer and wait for the 5th incident of someone abusing a child. So I deeply respect the concern and will continue to try to be as transparent as possible. But we should also be really clear that the reason we come to this job is so that students learn. And if we're going to harm a child in the process of that, not on the public money.
I just have to reemphasize the fact I understand substitutes have very few protections. They're at-will employees. But I've seen some very good, very long-term subs that have been either disciplined or fired over things as innocuous as what I've said, things that an average person with common sense would say, that's nothing. That could happen on any given day for any given teacher. And I think that's a 2-week standard to have. Now, if I agree, someone's abusing students, they should be out the door. If there's any questions, they should be out the door. But I've seen some really minor things relating to subs, and I think they've actually been abused in that way by your administration. And I would encourage you to take a closer look at that, if indeed that is not your intention, to take a closer look at the message you're sending to your people that are carrying things out that way.
Great, thank you.
All right, now, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilman Parks for his leadership in bringing this to us, and you, Superintendent Daisy, for your leadership.
Thank you.
I think it has been a breath of fresh air and a high bar and a high tone. I certainly have enjoyed visiting and collaborating with the schools in my district. I try to get out several times a month. In fact, this evening I'm going to be at Bethune.
Bethune Middle School.
High, and we're going to be working closely together.
Right.
It was mentioned before, how important the arts are. I know that we're trying to bring these programs back into school. And just really can't underscore the importance of them and extra curricular activities. It really make a difference in the lives of young people as they're growing up. You reference was made to the marching band, the jazz group, Beyond the Bell, another extraordinary group of young folks who I've enjoyed hearing and working with. But we got to do a better job, I think, in a couple of areas, again, that have been referenced already. One, the joint power agreements.
Yes.
Using facilities in ways that we haven't before, especially in the 9th District, where green space is at a premium, open space is at a premium. We've got to find ways to use these campuses in ways that we haven't before, and to do it in a way that assists the community and the students in those areas. Classic example is the Maya Angelou complex there on Avalon, and right across is the Wetlands project. It just sort of sits there during the day. Again, we'd like to see a little more programming, not the school district's fault, not Parks and Rec's fault, but we both need to be working together, I think, in ways that we haven't to create these, make sure these resources are available and that we can use them. But my question, about a third of the population in the 9th District is under the age of 18. And so these figures are very sobering. The council comparisons are I think, very instructive, again, demonstrating how some parts of the city are just left behind. But share with us, Superintendent, on this whole notion of third grade English language proficiency and advancement, for example. What kinds of intervention strategies is the district employing? What kinds of things can neighbors, can parents look toward so that we can see that these scores go up specifically in the 9th District?
So, Mr. Price, you raise an important point about when we do interventions, we don't do them across the entire city. Usually we do them by need. And so I do know your particular district, and so the investments in those programs are usually there first, because that's where greatest need is. It's where some of our youth have the greatest amount of struggle. It is exactly how the local control funding formula was designed, so that students with greatest need get the greatest amount of resources. When we targeted, after bringing back many of the programs that were lost during the Great Recession, they come back in inverse order of poverty. So schools with the greatest amount are getting them at the first as we roll that out, so that we can make sure that students who are entering school ready to learn, finishing third grade, reading on grade level, etc., getting reclassified so they're not a long-term language learner, are programs that are targeted. We also target not just academics. So we have 14 wellness centers, which are nothing short of an astonishing clinic for communities and schools that have opened up, many targeted in the regions where youth have the least amount of access to health care around that. That has been incredibly helpful, and has actually been a very good venture.
Okay, Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm a member of the Education and Neighborhoods Committee, and I just want to commend Chair Bernard Parks and Vice Chair Nuri Martinez for their leadership on this very important issue, and I want to thank Superintendent Daisy for all the work you've done. This is extremely exciting because in recent memory, no one can really remember a time when we've had, when we're working toward building a strong relationship with this body and the administration of the LAUSD, and I want to do everything I can to just continue encouraging that. I was raised in the public school system and am a product of the public school system, and have always thought of our schools as neighborhood centers. It's important enough of an issue for me that one of my very first hires was an education deputy, Star Parsamian, and I think she's doing exceptional work on behalf of my constituents that I serve. And We are formalizing relationships with all of our educational institutions in the 13th, and we're working on joint use and other matters of mutual interest, which is something that I worked on behalf of my predecessor. My philosophy and strong belief is that nothing that we do is more important than looking after our youth, period. It's the building blocks of society, and I just want to commend the work you're doing there. The incremental improvements across all the established categories, very impressive. And I know that in the 13th in particular, we have schools that are on the rise and becoming more prestigious. And I see it. I'm in my district all the time in the schools. And I want to just continue that push forward. One question I have, which I think may be an opportunity, is in relation to the Safe Routes program. It's my understanding that not all the schools apply for Safe Routes funding, which is critical. We had a tragedy last week in Hollywood, and I was there the next morning. My office is taking proactive measures in relation to that particular tragedy, but
I appreciate that.
And I want to work with LEOSD on school safety around all of the schools, and see if we can develop a program of a comprehensive approach around that, because traffic safety is not just an issue citywide, but it's of particular interest around our schools. So I just want to say that, and I look forward to working with you very closely. And again, just encourage this collaboration. It's the way forward. It's a very exciting time. So congratulations, and thanks again for coming to this body and making your presentation.
My pleasure. I thank you. We too are looking forward to the collaboration around. We know we have finite resources and almost infinite need in terms of school crossings, and so it's been a good relationship. We know we can make it stronger.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. And like all my colleagues, I too want to thank you for your work. But I not only want to thank you for your work, but I think, as I've often said, that you have one of the toughest public service jobs in the country. Not only one of the toughest, just given the funding that is given to you to do some incredible amount of work, but also one of the most important ones, because if we look at the future workforce, most of our kids are getting educated in large urban centers like LEUSD, and we are the second largest school district. So you not only have one of the toughest jobs, but you also have one of the most important. And I want to thank you for being here today. Something as simple as this, being here with your dashboard of indicators, telling us how LEUSD is doing, being transparent about it, having a parade to go around the city and the school district to tell the public about how the district is doing. I think as simple as that may be, it wasn't always the case. And so to come and tell us all these indicators, how we are doing, helps us think about how we could partner with you to continue doing the work in improving the lives of our young children, particularly when it comes to closing the achievement gap. Yes. And looking at which students, subgroups of students are doing well, which are not, and which we need to support, helps us look at our programs and what we are doing and where we can help. I like the idea that Mr. Fuentes brought up in terms of if, let's say, English language learners are the ones that need the most support. What are we doing as a city, although it's an quote-unquote academic indicator, what can we do to support that in all the work we do and the resources we're putting behind that? So I want to thank you for the work you're doing on that. By the way, what percentage of our students are English language learners at LEUSD?
So the percentage of students is just about 30%.
30%
of our students are language learners. That does not mean that they were a language learner and are reclassified. There's a much larger percentage. Most of our students speak more than one language, but who have not been proficient yet in English is about 30%. Sir.
And one question I have, because when summer school was no longer offered just a few years ago, one of the things the city did do, and I think it helped quite a bit, was we invested in summer night lights during the summer, which put more money into those areas that are most plagued, that's my Spanglish, plagued by, I was also an English language learner, I was also, by the way, suspended. And so the work you did on looking at that, you know, when I went to school on the east side, it was quite often common for a lot of us to get suspended, and the work you're doing there, I think a lot that could have been cut off quite a bit if you had we done the work back then. But if we did Summer Night Lights, which helped, I think, mitigate some of the negative impacts we would have had with more children, more young people being on the streets without summer school. What is the status of summer school and any efforts to get more of our young people enrolled in summer programs?
So summer school programs are usually three types. One is you struggled and didn't pass a class, so you're taking it over again so you can pass it. One is you're taking an accelerated course, so you can build your transcript for college. And then the third one is you're taking an enrichment course because you're going to take your first AP test. So it's a bridge course to a more difficult one. Before the recession, we had about $48 million in summer programs. 2 years ago, we were 800,000. We had lost all of that. We are putting it back, and we're very lucky. When we got the waiver in the No Child Left Behind, that allowed us for the first time this summer to have summer school across the district again, as a result of the ability to repurpose the money that was taken away under No Child Left Behind. So you'll see this summer, for the first time in 6 years, a broad-scale summer program again.
Yeah, good. And I think that it's going to help us quite a bit. But I think this is an ongoing discussion, lots to talk about, and lots of partnering to do. When I was on the school board, our goal at that time was to build more schools, build capacity, now focusing, and I think the discussion at that time was a lot of how we could do joint use, partner up with our facilities, etc.
Watch your time.
Now on academics, and you're more focused on that, obviously, I think it's time that we continue to have those discussions on improving academics for our students and how we do that.
I can't tell you that the reason I get to be focused on that is that students have seats. I mean, it's legacy about what happened, and it's amazing. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Labange. You see what you started out here? You started off willful defiance. Anyway, with that said, Mr. Krikorian.
See, it spreads. Thank you, Mr. President. Superintendent Daisy, thank you very much for being here and for this important report, because you're sharing with us a great deal of good news about public education here in Los Angeles that too often that story is not told. And I, for one, am frankly sick and tired of the demagoguery that surrounds public education, with those who would cite public education as an indicator of the decline of Los Angeles. The truth is, there's a lot of ascendancy going on in LAUSD right now, and the data that you're sharing has shown that. And thanks to your leadership and Ms. Martinez's and others, our schools are dramatically improving against all odds. Because there are not that many school districts in the country, perhaps none, that speak 92 languages at home. There are not too many school districts in the country that have 30% English language learners. And on top of all that, you have to deal with the 30-year history of underfunding of public education in the state of California. And when many of us were in the state legislature, the finest universities in the country came together and tried to make recommendations as to what California needed in its education system. Yes, there were a lot of recommendations about reform, but there were also recommendations about substantially increasing California's funding of its public education system that continue to be ignored to this day. And so in that framework, for us to see this kind of progress that you're making, I think is a tremendous bit of good news that people should take note of. There's a couple of specific things in this report that I wanted to follow up with you about. Maybe you can expand upon a little bit after the president cuts me off, because I don't want to be willfully defiant. But you talked about improvement in attendance, tremendously important. Can you speak not only about the educational importance of that, but also what significance that has with average daily attendance and the funding that the system gets, that the district gets? Graduation rates, always demagogued. Thank you very much for clarifying that 66% does not mean that 34% are dropouts. That's correct. And I'd like you to speak more to that, please. If you can, I'd like you to identify what percentage of LAUSD students go on to attend the University of California or the Cal State system if you have that data available. And then finally, I just want to reiterate Mr. O'Farrell's important point about safety around schools. And too often, we're scrambling to try and get federal funding for safe routes to schools and those sorts of things, and we're not really necessarily aware of what our district schools need as much as we should be. So that's an area of collaboration that really needs to be improved. And then just finally, on the ADA issue, if the city can be a better partner in terms of truancy enforcement or if there are any issues like that, I'd like your recommendations that we might be able to follow up on that as well. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. So the ADA, which is the average daily attendance, is important. We track it because we want you in school. You're safest when you're in school. You don't belong on the streets. You learn, you do well. But we also, that's how we're funded. So in California, your funding is determined at the beginning of the year based on the formula I just spoke about, but you only get it if students come to school. So you get a portion of it for every time a student comes to school, or said another way, you lose a portion of it when students don't come to school. So the average daily attendance determines how much of what you're eligible can you actually have to spend. Incredibly important, as you said. Graduation rates are very important. I still go, I go to graduations all the time, and I still am humbled by how many youth will walk up to me, and it's the first time in my family today that someone is graduating. So we are, and I say this all the time, LA is America only sooner. We are coming to a hometown near you. If we are successful at this matters. This is what this country looks like. And so understanding how important it is for students to complete is incredibly important. And there's a lot of pressures, many of them well out of our control. Thousands and thousands and thousands of students are homeless in LAUSD. Thousands that are currently not documented. And those all have impacts about a student's ability to continue. It's why we never say goodbye to you if you don't complete in 4 years. We'll continue to work with you. But it is important to do the 4-year graduation rate. We don't shy from that. And the third piece is, I think what we'll do is I'll work with whomever as a liaison to try to place the priority of school crossing safety needs so that we can get that on one piece of paper. We tend to work with the DOT on that.
Great. And UC and CSU graduation.
I'm sorry, I forgot the fourth one. And so we twice every other year we get the acceptance rate, but it's 2 years lag behind if you get the continuation rate. So acceptance rates are very high. Persistence rates are lower. There's a lot of factors in terms of persistence rates. One is the economics of going. Two is the ability for students to transition to higher ed and stay there with polls to come back home. By and large, overwhelmingly, our students go to the California system, community colleges, Cal States, and UCs. We do have a high percentage of students who attend historically black universities and colleges and historically Latino universities and colleges. Those tend to be our greatest out-of-state placements as well. And I would also say that while we also track that, students who leave us to immediately serve in the armed forces is also a significant percentage as well, and then complete after that. I can get you the data by each one of those. I don't obviously have them at the top of my mind, but we do track that every other year, and we can produce that.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome, Dr. Daisy, to City Hall. It's great to see you.
Nice to be
Thank
here.
you very much for your flexibility and your transparency here today. The times that we got to serve together were 4 years of very, very tough decisions at the district. If it wasn't for teachers and parents and a lot of the sacrifices that were made, and almost $2 billion later, the district, it was a very rough road, tough for all of us, and we had to make really tough decisions. But to see the numbers and the statistics and the district growing, it just only makes me think that things can only get better.
Yep.
And that this has taught us how to focus, and it's taught has taught all of us how to prioritize our kids' educations. One of the things that I've talked about often, and you've heard me say this, is that often when you have the ability to move into a nicer part of the city, oftentimes we look at the type of schools that you would send your child to, because that's important. A lot of our families across the city don't have that ability, and being in a nicer neighborhood shouldn't dictate the kind of education that our children get. So we need to make sure everything's equitable and that all of our kids have the same quality of education. One of the things I worked with you on when I was on the school board was arts.
Yes.
And the reason it was so important is because I come out of the arts at San Fernando High School and all through my public school life. And it's another vehicle to motivate kids to want to stay in school. Can you provide me with an update of where we are in terms of the implementation of the Arts at the Core resolution that we passed,
Yes.
and where we are in terms of a budget? That's one question. And my second question is, I know Mr. Fuentes and Mr. Huizar talked about CDBG funds. How do we use local control funding in communities across the city based on its needs, and how can we strategically work together to make sure it gets to the kids that really need it and we start making some improvements across the city?
So thank you, and it was a privilege to serve for you, and you helped us understand every single time that your zip code cannot be a marker of the quality of the school that you have the opportunity to go to. So we just gave a report, and I will send it to you. It just dawned on me that I didn't, which was the first update of Arts at the Core, which laid out the first set of investments. It's lengthy, so I will send that over this afternoon when I go back so you can read that piece. Again, 4-year investment cycle. Not everything comes back, as you know, in the first year. But what we've done is we've determined how to bring arts back as the strategic plan that you approved and then accepted gets funded in the next 4 years. That report's done. We'll have that. Now, the first year of it goes into this year's budget proposal around that. The second thing is, without being too direct, it's the law that students of greatest need have to have the greatest amount of new funding. And we will work as a city to make sure that we rise to the occasion to follow that. And for the first time, California has said, if you are a school with the majority of students struggle because they live in a circumstance of poverty or don't speak English yet, or the students who go there live in foster care, you get greater resources. And that's how the law was written around that piece. So everybody, after this terrible recession, wants everything put back. We have limited funding, and it's increasing. And where it goes first have to be for the neediest students. And that's the proposal that we are preparing for the board. That's a good answer.
Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Dr. Daisy, for
Thank you,
your
sir.
ongoing leadership. You've been so receptive to me and my staff on some of the issues involving schools in my district, and I want to thank you for that. And I believe that the success in these numbers that you shared with us comes to this. You put children first. You put all politics aside for the betterment of children in our city and in our school district as well. And I mean, it's where's our news partners that should highlight this API growth? We need them to be. This should be a top story. And for those who continue to slam our school district, I challenge them to visit Jordan Downs High School and visit the AP Physics class at Jordan Downs High School, or to visit Dana Middle School's award-winning band.
That's right.
Or to go down to South Shore's Performing Arts, Visual Arts Magnet, and watch their spring musical performance. And there's a lot more to do. And as a product of public schools, my sisters are teachers. My wife's a teacher with LA Unified. I know the work that's put in and day out with our teachers, and we
don't stop
continue
there.
to thank them.
Harry Bridges,
Right.
Harvard Teacher Prep.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. I want to, and some of as my wife and I struggle with parents who come to us when we drop off our kids at school. They're coming to us and saying, "What are you doing with middle school?" We have an incredible primary elementary school system, but we tend to see a decline in enrollment in the middle school stage. What's your response to that? Because for us, and we want to invest in our local middle school and Dana Middle School. We have that ongoing dialogue. Yeah. We want to ensure that we don't lose those. We don't drop enrollment in the middle school stages.
So you appropriately press very hard on this issue. And so the work we've done to provide
very high-end programs at middle schools, such as our magnet programs, our thematic magnet programs, allowing schools to have the autonomy through our pilot programs. Those have had a huge effect on both bringing families back and retaining families. Their investments the board has made, and we continue to make them. That has been a huge focus. The other part is, and I mentioned Harry Bridges because you were going through some schools, very, very important model around the notion of K-8.
Right.
And that students who are known well tend to stay with us by adults. And so that is a model that we look at as well.
Mr. LaBonge, you mentioned something about creating a task force on the joint use. I remember as a kid growing up, every summer I went to Leland Street School, went to Dana Middle School. What youth services, right? So what's your status on that motion? You got to circle that?
Your help and contribution.
Show me
and Beyond the Bill is a great program.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And lastly, and we're probably going to hear from public comment that, the city of Los Angeles has no authority under LA Unified School District. I say, listen, what impacts our campuses today affects our city, both socially, economically. And this is great. Thank you, Mr. Parks, for bringing Dr. Daisy in. And I continue to thank you. And last question to close. Thoughts on the rollout of the Common Core instruction? Where are we at on that?
So we're a leader in this area, a very proud leader. The entirety of the professional development was done by our teachers. That's a first in LA. So more than 2 years ago, we chose 300 faculty to be Common Core Fellows. They are the ones actually leading the professional development across all of LAUSD. We have been a year ahead of the state on this issue, and we are moving through the English language arts and mathematics. It'll be 2 years before the science when the state adopts the approved course and sequence for those pieces. It's actually going very well.
Good.
Very, very well.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks, Mr. Parks, for arranging this presentation. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Almost good afternoon. Still good morning. You still a resident of Council District 11?
You are my council member.
Good. Excellent. I'm always glad to see CD11 residents with New England roots in particular. Thank you for being here today. Most of the questions I had were already asked, the benefit of being one of the last to rise. But there are 2 or 3 particular things I wanted to ask about. One is, I think you and Mr. Krikorian alluded to homeless children who are in LAUSD.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what LAUSD does to try to identify them, keep them enrolled, and if there's anything in particular the city or the county should be doing to be more cooperative.
So we have, and in partnership with the city, youth source centers across LA. We can always have more of them, but these centers help identify students. We're talking about students not in shelters. That we understand we do a very good job with that, with all of the local agencies. These are students who just don't declare. When we know that, we provide them with wraparound support services and identification, particularly if they're currently not attending or thinking that they can't attend. This is recovery and reentry around that. Very successful program. It is an expenditure for which we continue to increase our investment in across the city.
I also wanted to ask about special education programs. In Massachusetts, where I come, they have very clear mandates about special education programs and a lot of spending. I'm curious how Los Angeles measures up in terms of funding for and in terms of results from its special education versus other big cities or other California cities.
We actually do an amazing job in this area with substantially less funds that we should be entitled to having. So the federal government does not fully fund its program, which means that we supplement that through general fund money. Not only we just shouldn't have to. I mean, we should be fully funded, but of course we do that. And you may know that for years, long before I got here, LAUSD struggled to have its special education program be of the quality it is now when we were under a consent decree. We're almost exited from that consent decree, and that is something that we're incredibly proud of. I mean, most folks might not realize just the breadth of services from youth who are hospitalized, youth who have severe and impacted opportunities, transitioning youth to independent living. all the way to like deaf and hard of hearing. It's an amazing array of programs. We are a powerhouse in Special Olympics. Plug for the city. We're hosting the International Special Olympics next summer, and LA will be a huge piece of that. And our Special Olympic athletes are also a powerhouse in the state. It has come a tremendous ways.
Thanks. And my final question was about nutrition,
Yes.
Childhood and student nutrition. I know LAUSD has done a lot over the years, even back when Marlene Cantor was on the board. Paula Daniels, the city's food czar, has done some work with LAUSD. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, but I had a particular question about it. I've gotten reports in the past couple of weeks from some of my constituents in Venice that some of the breakfast programs have been suspended or pulled back, and instead children are getting fast food provided to them
that would be news to
during
me.
the first period of the day as part of some subsidy from Tyson or something, I'm hearing?
That is news to me. I would find that hard to believe, but sometimes I say that and then I'm proven wrong. Be glad to look into that. That would be absolutely against any policy that we would have around that piece. We're a leader in the country on healthy nutrition and changing the food lunch program. I would also argue that most of the menus were created by youth themselves and then tested, food tested. And the shift that we've made to healthier choices and healthy opportunities actually has been enormous. We struggle just in society around access. I mean, food deserts just here in LA proper, in terms of the school district, is beyond LA City, continues to be an issue. And so I don't think we're ever going to be very successful until the entirety of the community has the same resources and opportunities for healthy food and healthy choices of food that a school would have. And we look forward to partnering. I mean, Paula Daniels is an amazing individual, also a strong collaborator and colleague with the school district, and has been very instrumental in this area.
Great. Anything I can do to help in any of those areas, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Okay, what I'm going to do, Mr. Parks, I'm going to hold you to close, but I do have Mr. Koretz, so if it's okay with you, I'll call on Mr. Koretz and then Mr. Parks to close.
Okay, just one more quick question.
Yes.
I agree with prioritizing our kids, obviously, in the school system, but I think the adult education system has a lot of benefits as well, and I know we cut it pretty deeply. What are our short and long-term projections for restoring that important part of our system?
So I couldn't agree with you more. We actually are one of the few systems who kept adult education. We have more than 100,000 individuals in adult education. And we're in the middle of a transition in California about how it would look going forward and what agencies are responsible for that. So I know that you know, and it's good for everybody to understand, there's a competitive set of grants that are out there right now for which LA, as a consortia with community college and other districts, are applying. I think we're actually the most competitive to then get finally stable direct funding to support an adult education program with multiple partners. We'll know a lot more. I mean, we're going to maintain our program, but we'll know a lot more in a year when we see what the governor does with grants that are given out. I certainly hope and expect that LA would be a winner.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Parks to close.
Thank you very much. While you're in a good mood, I just want to ask if we could get a commitment from you that each January, if we can have you come back to committee and to council in February to give us an annual update on our state of the schools in the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah, I'd be a privilege.
So we'll work with your staff on that. Let me go through a couple of questions because they come to us. One of them just this morning, and I think you covered it in our committee on what I call the iPad controversy.
Yes.
And it seems like it's continuing to be a controversy. I guess just today there's a demonstration about whether the appropriate source of funds for iPads is the bond construction funds. Could you comment on that?
Sure. I don't understand the controversy. Okay. I think it's a good thing to give youth in poverty technology. I've never understood the controversy about the moral obligation that a youth should have access to technology and curriculum regardless of where they live. So, as I said before, we're completely not confused about our mission, and that is to provide all 800,000 the same opportunity that some have without our support. Our bond council is very clear. They've approved the project. Our school board is very clear. They continue to approve the project. We're very clear that it's their right.
Okay. Thank you.
And we also know that there's no more paper and pencil test anymore in the state. You must have a device or you can't take your state tests any longer.
Okay. And could you comment briefly on, as you discussed in committee, about charter schools, where that controversy and what the controversy between what they call regular schools and charter schools?
Yeah, again, I respect that there must be a controversy out there somewhere. I'm not sure what it is. The law of California allows for public charter schools. We are an authorizing, meaning the school board. We authorize petitions to open up public charter schools, and we close low-performing schools or schools that violate that. We don't run charter schools. We have nothing to do with their operation. We do only oversight. LAUSD has a very high percentage versus California, one of the highest in the nation around this. It's a parent's right to have that kind of choice. And if they are high performing, I will continue to recommend their support. And if they're low performing, I will continue to recommend their closure.
Also, would you comment, and recently there's a trend towards putting medical facilities on high school campuses?
Absolutely. So I made some comment, I forgot which council member I said, we have now 14 full-service health clinics. And if I know you've walked into one of them, they look nothing short of like the best emergency room I've ever seen. We have tremendous volunteer support by doctors, soon-to-be dentists, nurses. We have tremendous partnerships with the university and the health centers so that students get health care. Let me give you one data point, sir. Just recently, we did a screening. There were 1,200 students at that point who were screened. It was kind of an oral health screening. You come in, take a look at your teeth, see how the student's doing. In that one capture, 60 students had abscesses that required immediate medical attention. And without the screening, I'm trying to visualize what it's like to be a fourth grader, to have an abscess every day and then try to do your work. They're unbelievably needed. And we have moved them and built them in the city, and they're incredibly well received. And we're very thankful to all the partners who make it possible.
Okay. And then my final question is that the recent decision by the board in creating the liaison position to replace Ms. Lamont in this interim, what can the community expect from that position?
So I make it my sole policy never to speak for the Board of Education. It has kept me very
This
much
is just
out of difficulty.
No, I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what can the community expect?
I think that the board made a decision to help the community have a direct line of communication with the district and representation. And the person that they chose, obviously, I think I'm pretty clear and biased. I mean, I've known Dr. Rousseau. I couldn't speak more highly of her. She was a principal. She's been a superintendent. She's a revered professor. And she actually was the superintendent for that area, knows the schools well. I think what the community should expect is very active outreach and communication, and I'm very grateful for it.
Okay. My final request, one of the things that I think would be helpful with this information you've given us, if we could also get a roster of your superintendents in the areas that they cover.
Oh, absolutely.
We deal quite readily with our principals, but it's a very difficult process to figure out the maze to get through LA Unified and who's the superintendent, deputy superintendent, and how you're structured.
There's 5 of them. We'll be glad to send it over. They're also all available on our website. So you can go on our website, call up your school, and find every one of those people. But we'll make it easier for you guys and just send you over all of that information.
Just say thank you very much for coming to
My
both
pleasure.
of these meetings, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, sir.
And I, too, want to thank you for everything that you've done, for being there whenever I've had the occasion to call. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you for adjusting your calendar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Give a big hand now.
So we will note and file this issue. Mr. Labange, I want to move to item 11. That's your item. Okay, let's, Mr. Labange, come on. Okay, guys, if we could move that to the side, we're going to go to item 16, and I need Mr. Arnold Sachs and John Walsh on item 16. And so if you guys could back a bit, Betsy, work as quickly as you can. No, I want to move my agenda. Okay, guys, thank you. Thank you. And let's now go to item 16 with Mr. Walsh.
Thank you for an hour and a half of nauseating self-congratulations, which you now have a picture of. Number 16, this concerns an amendment to the Geoenvironmental Technologies. This is John Walsh at HollywoodHighlands.org or tweeting at Hollywood Dems. This concerns Public Works, the Bureau of Sanitation, which does a pretty good job. Concerns sewer construction, where you do a good job. Other cities, the sewers are flooded. Of course, the sewers haven't stood the test of a big rainstorm lately, but they have generally passed the test. And we are 100% in favor of your maintaining the sewer system. And when I think of sewers, I think of the LA City Council. I don't know why. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Thank you. Let's prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote. Mr.
15 ayes.
Forthwith on that item. Now, Mr. Labange, 11.
Members, I just wanted to ask your support. History is so important to cover the history here. Now, our clerk's office does have an archivist, but if there was a historian name, and Mr. President, I'll accept a friendly amendment, even if it was an honorary historian. If our budget doesn't allow us to have a historian, let's get a historian that we know and point to. 232 years ago, 44 people walked 9 miles from the Mission San Gabriel to the banks of what would be the Los Angeles River to start this great Pueblo, Los Angeles, to this great metropolitan. History's important. Ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Parks.
I support this, but I wanted to find out if we could reconsider number 12, because without archivists, you're not going to have a great historian. And what we find in watching this process over the last several years is that we are so intent in getting rid of stuff through ITGS committee because it reaches a certain threshold of time, we throw away stuff that is actually great benefit to our history. Give you an example. I just went to a function this week where young ladies put together a 35-minute film on Tom Bradley and had to go to the public domain to get film and pictures because the city did not have adequate resources on archives to identify the mayor who had been here for 20 years. And in fact, they couldn't even find his package within LAPD. They found one photograph. So it would be something to talk about the archivists that would be responsible for identifying these types of things we should be maintaining. When I was in the police department, we were trying to help Atlanta develop their plans for the Olympics, only to find out that all of our plans from '84 had been disposed of because no one thought they were important enough to keep. So I would hope number 12 would be equally as important as 11, to have an archivist in place that would go through departments and make sure before they destroy files based on 10 years or 12 years, that somebody's looked through them and say they're not just files, they're actually part of our history.
Mr. President, we already passed 12. So together, they're going to go forward, and we want to support. 12's already been passed, so I thank you for that. Support on 11. I thank you for that, too.
Okay, you know what? I don't have a problem where it relates to reconsideration of 12. If you're...
We already voted on it, so we're passed. It's a great A. I'm trying to be good, Mr. Principal. He just wanted to speak to it.
Is received and filed, which appears it's not funded.
Okay.
I'm talking about
Is that true,
having...
Mr. Clerk, there on that? On the receive and file? I thought it was to put it in the budget.
Why don't we vote to just reconsider it, Mr. Labange, and I will continue it, and you and Mr. Parks, if you look
we
into
figured out Mr. Parks is right. Okay, I was wrong. So we should reconsider it to try to then send it to Budget and Finance and not reconsider it.
Okay.
I made it.
So what we'll do now, we're going to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. I'm sorry.
We're going to vote on 11. So let's open on 11, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, now where it relates to 12, we're going to vote on reconsideration. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote. And
15 ayes.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry for cutting you off. And the next vote would be, Mr. Krikorian, are you okay with having this diverted to you? Okay, so what we will do is, and do we need to vote on that? So without objection, we will refer 12 to Budget and Finance. Yes?
I'd just like to ask Mr. Krikorian, I know we have an archivist, but what I'm asking if we have more than one that looks at 40 departments and maintains some records that the historian can then use as a basis of their job. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll look at that when we get to Budget and Finance. So let's move on. Item 18, Herman, Mr. Herman, and John Walsh. Please come forward on item 18.
I want to thank you for that correction. Yes, Mr. Herman, thank you. We're talking about the 86th Annual Academy Awards on March 2nd at the sum amount of $300,000 for city resources for the Academy Motion Picture Arts and Science. But is this uniting behind a cause? All you Angelenos, think about it. Is this a cause, really, at a time of inadequate spending by the city of Los Angeles to provide $300,000? I find that shameful at a time when the ceiling deficit is at a mojo of a rise. And we, you, us, we the people of Los Angeles will pay this small figure amount when you would then say to yourself, why can't they pay for it themselves? What would it cost to have the police force out there? At what dollar amount is to question? Is it in the thousands or is it in the millions for a week of security? What about your neighborhoods? Are you safe? Should we spend $300,000 on the academies when they can do it themselves? I find something very suspicious about this, and I think all of you in Los Angeles would agree. So when in question about how the city delegates your tax-paying dollars, our revenues at a time of a deficit, let's blame Jose Huizar of LA Live for it. Say no vote for Jose Huizar. Thank you.
Mr. Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org or jwalshconfidential.wordpress.com. The amount of money, a rough order of magnitude, in what this costs the Academy Awards to the city of Los Angeles in extraordinary amounts of city money is about $3 to $4 million. That's what we're paying to subsidize the academy. In other words, we're paying but what is the academy going to pay us for the city? For our city, extraordinary city services, $300,000. That's 10 cents on the dollar. Let's talk about overtime just on the police. This isn't a one-day thing. They close the street a week ahead of time. We have police overtime for 7 or 8 days. But you're saying now for a chump change of $300,000, they get everything. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay, let's, Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick point of clarification.
I was hoping somebody would, but I was
The
just gonna
Academy of
move on.
Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is paying the city of Los Angeles $300,000 for city services related to the annual Academy Awards. They are paying us that fee that was negotiated. The Academy Awards every year results in millions of dollars spent in helping the local economy. So this is a tradition that we firmly believe in and is alive and well in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you for that point of clarification. Let's prepare to vote. Let's open.
Mr. Wesson, Mr. President, I just wanted to rise to thank Mr. O'Farrell for his great leadership, what he's doing in Hollywood, and articulating that message and all that is done. It's a very good thing for all of us.
Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, item 19, I have Mr. Herman and Mr. Sachs. I don't see Mr. Sachs. And I have Mr. Walsh. If you could please come forward. This is item 19.
And Mr. President, while they're making their way to the podium, we have a request from member for item number 5 to be sent forthwith.
Without objection.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, tweeting at Hollywood Dems. I'll answer what was said under public comment about the Academy Awards. But
No. You're going to, Mr. Walsh, this is on item 19. In your general public comment, you can reference the item that came before this. So we're on item 19.
The clock. Notice how he heckles me. Wrought iron fencing and gate work at walkway south of the freeway. A construction of, and this is $47,000. This concerns the pipeline franchise revenue portion of Council District 10. This is for, not for us, it's for those who benefit from the wrought iron, which isn't wrought iron fencing. And it was brought here from the Real Property Trust Fund. But you know what? You can blather all you want. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay, Mr. Herman. And Mr. Herman, when I call you the next time, if you're going to sit in the back, I'm going to start deleting your time as you walk up. I called you. You should have been here. At least be fair about it.
Would you wish for me to fall and
No.
run?
What I wish for you to do is speak on item 19.
I'll start since you started my time without me. Thank you, Mr. Herman. Revenue funds are being spent. Oh, my God. They're being spent for what? District 10, Mr. Herman Price, is your area, or is yours, regarding a what? A 10-inch pipeline franchise revenue fund for construction of wrought iron fencing and gate work at walkways south of the 10 freeway of Adams Boulevard between Virginia Road and Bronson Avenue. And although I do not live in that area, and I'd rather not, because I and Mr. Weezer live in District 14, we just want to make sure that if these allocated funds are all worth the while for all of you in Los Angeles to pay for, then pay for it. Because no one seems to care that we have enough concrete, iron bars, and jails to have us live like we're in prison in the city of Los Angeles is more than just an insult. But let me keep the topic here. So looking at this from the general fund, number 100/40 as follows: 14,260 to account 001014, construction salaries of 62,900 to the account 003180, construction materials and supplies for construction of wrought iron fencing. Hey, let's give Mark Riley a call because we could use our city expenses to pay for his illegal garage. Thank you.
Okay, let's prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
So let's now go to item 17, is it, Mr. Clerk? And does Mr. Walsh have any time remaining?
No, sir.
Okay, so then if Mr. Sachs isn't here, then let's prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Now, it's my understanding there was, we need to make a change where it relates to item 1, or has that been worked out? Do we need to reconsider it and then vote on it again?
No, sir, we do not.
We're fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so sergeants, that brings us to item 21. If I could please ask you to clear the council chambers as we move into, I'm having a disturbance from the back of the room. Sergeants, please deal with that disturbance. It's from a regular, Mr. Herman. And at this point, let's clear the council chambers. We will go into closed session, and then we will return.
Traffic accident like this before, where a teenager has decided to run from the police and been struck by a motor vehicle.
5859 KF 5060, watch 3.
Curfew laws restrict the right of juveniles to be outdoors or in the public places after 10 p.m. until sunrise the next day. Such laws aim to establish a safer community and to better protect people from becoming victims of crimes or becoming involved in a crime. Most people don't agree with our curfew laws and would rather run the risk of being picked up by the police and ticketed for violation of curfew. However, they are more likely to run into the many real dangers that face us every time we go out at night.
We have found that kids out so late are normally caught up in violence, traffic accidents, and we up to no good. Some of these kids still they're not aware of the law, and they're not educated on it.
Drinking, drugs, sexual predators, and gang-related activities are only few of the dangers we face regardless of how young or old you are. If you are under the age of 18, this law applies to you. What happens if you are caught? You will be taken to the station where the ticket is written out to you and your parent or guardian are called to pick you up. If your parent cannot pick you up, you will be placed into a protective custody or sent to a juvenile facility.
Guardian at something like an event such as Thrill Beach.
The guardian is not just someone appointed to by the parents. A guardian is someone appointed by the courts.
You can legally stay out late if you are participating in a religious, educational, or political activity, accompanied by a parent or guardian, going to or from their place of employment, responding to some type of emergency, returning home from school, cultural, or recreation activity.
And that's our message, is not only enforcing the curfew violation, but also educating them that they need to stay home and stay safe.
The curfew laws are not just here to protect us, they're here to protect the safety of everyone in our community.
Okay, so we're back in open session. Mr. Clerk, what's before this council?
Mr. President, that brings council to general public comment.
Okay, do we have a Melissa Balin? I'll call her name later. We have Mr. Wall. Are you here? Is that Miss? Please come forward. And after you, we'll have John Walsh, followed by Mr. Herman. So go right ahead.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of City Council. My name is Melissa Ballin. I actually went to North Hollywood High School, born and raised, and I'm currently running for governor of California. So I wanted to let everyone know, but today I'm speaking on behalf of we the people. I was raised with the saying, you can't fight City Hall, and I was under the impression that that was because City Hall is just a building, and it's the people, the oath keepers, that are maintaining our laws. So I would like to let you know that we the people accept your valid oath of office and appreciate your service. And I would like to let you know that I'm here today because we had to receive a check from the City of Los Angeles due to court order for throwing away our belongings during Occupy Los Angeles. I do have the check in my hand today for $250, so we do consider ourselves victorious. But we would like to ask that you investigate several things, because this win would indicate a collusion in violation of the RICO Act to intentionally disrupt the people's right to peaceably assemble. In honor of full disclosure, I would like to let those of you know that were City Council members in 2011 that you have been named as defendants in my federal 1983 complaint for those violations of my civil liberties and excessive force that resulted in the miscarriage of my first pregnancy. It's nothing personal that I'm naming you as defendants, but I would like you to take it seriously and note your role in government. I'd like you to please look into the unconstitutional treatment of the women at Linwood County Jail, and as well the use of the mental health court as a weapon against its citizens. And I would like to formally explain to the city clerk and the city attorney's office that this letter saying that the checks are in receipt of releases in connection with the settlement for claim C12-4925.
Thank you. Thank you, and good luck. Good luck on your campaign. So next I have Mr. Walsh. No, your time has expired. I have Mr. Walsh and Mr. Herman. There's no applauding. Okay. John Walsh, followed by Mr. Herman and Mr. Arnold Sachs. Mr.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. What she said was her belongings were destroyed when you invaded the camp, the LAPD. She sued you in small claims court. You spent a year and a half fighting her in small claims court, and she won in small claims court. And you tried again and again not to give her a dime, and she just got the $250, which partially pays for the damage that you did in your illegal tearing apart and storming all over the encampment out here. It's an enormous victory. We will cover it on HollywoodHighlands.org. As far as what was said before, millions will be spent on the Academy Awards, and those millions will go mostly to Beverly Hills. We want people to realize that the Academy Awards is terrible, terrible event in Hollywood. We would like you to hold it downtown Pasadena. Okay. On my website, you will see fairly soon, as you know, the mayor of the city had, at least for 6 months, an LAPD car and driver. We understand he still has an LAPD car and driver. Now, on our website, we have a picture of we will have a picture of the mayor and his new girlfriend, Kim Honig, 31 years younger than him, half his age, 3 inches taller than he is. And, of course, for the first time, he's fallen in love with a Jewish woman from New York. And she's quite good-looking, and she looks around the nose like Barbara Streisand. And if you come to our website, by the end of the day, you will see a picture of her. And incidentally,
this isn't regarding the city
we
of Los
understand
Angeles.
it's about the city because he has an LAPD driver in New York.
That's a stretch.
Okay,
at best.
and incidentally,
Okay, your time. Thank you. Thank you. No. You are disrupting this meeting. Sergeants, just help him find his way to the door. Okay, now, Mr. Herman, followed by Arnold Sachs.
Edward Roybal was born on February.
Wait. I didn't call you. Mr. Herman, followed by Arnold Sachs, followed by Leah Renee. Now,
Please.
you will have your 2 seconds. Go right ahead. There's other
Edward
disruptions.
Roybal was born on February 10th, 1916 in Albuquerque. In Boyle Heights, he grew up in the barrio like myself and graduated from Roosevelt High School. Also served as a U.S. Army. Mr. Roybal was for the seat of the city council in 1947. A crusade against discrimination on housing. All of you who discriminate against housing. And during his tenure, against what? Loyalty for employment purposes, such as your crooked business throughout the city of Los Angeles. Widespread corruption. Organized crime will come to an end. The FBI will investigate this issue. Furthermore, he continued to work on behalf of Spanish-speaking people, not the BS talk of what we heard for an hour of nonsense by every 15 member with LAUSD. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're trying to help citizens with an education. Make it a priority to educate our children. Make it a priority to make education worth our values. To be better than not one of you, but above all of you. This is America, all of you. And De La Sour and Terria, since Mr. Englander walked out with his little pitiful cry, you know what? Disabled people need more from you. And Mr. Roybal started it. He was for the elderly, the rights of the poor, and the rights of physically challenged people. Do you get it? Do one of you get it? And this is my point. He drew upon the reports of widespread discrimination by police, by local government. And so I, too, bring out my advocacy for all of you to learn. Come here and make a motion. Bring to those who bring injustice justice.
Thank you. Mr. Labons, did you press your button? Okay. So now it is Arnold Sachs. I do not see Mr. Sachs. So I do have Miss Renee. Miss Renee, would you come forward? Nadine Hayes. Nadine Hayes. Miss Renee, come forward. You want to speak. So I have a Miss Renee, and I have a Nadine Hayes, and Brad. I can't make out the last name. So welcome, Miss Renee.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was going to speak today and follow up what happened yesterday. But because LAUSD was here, I thought I'd bring up something that's really important. It does reference the same problem, and it's happening in District 11. So, Mike Bonin, please, perhaps you could make an appointment to discuss this. The issue is knowledge is power. Power is knowledge. So, I'd like you to have this knowledge and then empower the City of Los Angeles children with it. I heard you all say schools need funding. You're looking for federal funds. Thousands of students are homeless. After-school programs are in need. Special education, art programs, marching bands, and safety programs. I'm from Fairfax High School. I got it. The problem is the Department of Building and Safety, critically epic failure, and maybe we just have to have the same rule book. I'm going to go to the assessor's website. I brought it here. I'm a big believer in technology, and all children should have access to it. So should all of us. It says, will the new construction of my own home be considered a remodel if I leave an existing foundation and one wall standing? And the answer is no. It'll be taxed as new construction. Here is the Revenue Tax Code section, new construction. Here's an order to apply from the California Coastal Commission, new construction. The reason why this is so important is 40% of the funds that go into the general fund go to your schools. If they can violate the schools, what do you think they're doing to your earthquake safety? Your fire safety, a lot of you have already received this. If you haven't, I've made 35 books. I'll get them to anybody who hasn't had them. Here's knowledge, 28 pages that they know these problems are going on inside the city. Here's all your violations of fire codes, some building codes. Here's your seismic hazard codes. What's going on? You guys just put in a new ordinance, 182.
Thank you, Ms. Renee. Thank you. So now I need Nadine. Do we have a Nadine Hayes? Please come forward. And do we have a Brad? Anybody named Brad? Okay, Brad left. And I got a card late, but I'm going to let the person speak anyway, the last speaker of today. But what we generally do, Ms. Balin or Rochelle, is that once we start, you cannot submit a card. But you were unaware, whoever that is was unaware. Look, would you guys sit down? I know what I'm doing. I just wanted to let this person know that I will get to him this time. This is your warning. So with that, if I could have Nadine, then Henry, and Sid. Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. My name's Nadine Hayes, and I wanted to first of all actually pay a compliment, because I know you guys probably get a lot of complaints. Everybody feels good if they're patted on the back. And I was pleased to see some of the screening coming off of the Hall of Justice, and it's beautiful, and I thank you for doing that. I am an advocate for justice, and I just wanted to express a concern that there seems to be this feeling that the city attorney office is to protect city employees. Now, granted, that might be one of their jobs, but if the city employees are doing corrupt acts, they need to say, you know, you're right. We're not going to fight this. We're going to try to fix it. I have had problems, and Councilman Krikorian probably remembers my name, because I was harassed continuously by the LAPD. I, too, was a participant in the Occupy movement. I didn't camp there. I'm a little old for that. I like my hot showers in the morning, but I participated, and I swear that got me into a lot of trouble. I was targeted, and by the time I'm done with my lawsuit in federal court, I will find out why. We've got documents from the FBI that basically says leaders in Occupy were targeted for assassination. If you want to see it, be happy to ask me for it. But this is not acceptable behavior for anybody. And people within your organization know about it, and they need to stop it. They need to say, we're going to turn this around, and we're going to start doing what's right for the people, not what's right for the money.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, Henry, please come forward, followed by Sid, and then we will conclude with Rochelle Balin.
Yes, as you know, Hackland Coal MOUs show how much money was sheltered from the pay of craftsmen at the discretion of the Hackler Board and the City Council. And we know by Judge Mooney's decision, no one can account for the money sheltered at the discretion of the Hackler Board or the City Council except the Hackler Board and the City Council. But as you know, a former member of the City Council, Mike Fuhrer, he sheltered that same money for us, and he's been doing it for years. Now he's serving as our city attorney. There would seem to be a conflict of interest for him not to account for the money that he sheltered in the first place as a councilman. And now, there's only 9 days left for Mr. Weston to make history in Black History Month and start accounting for the money that he sheltered in the first place. You're living in the footsteps of Mr. Mike, what's his name? Big John Ferrero, who started y'all out sheltering money for people and not accounting for it. And Mr. Labange here, he learned everything he did from Mr. John Ferrero, and he can't account for nothing. Mr. Deasy sat right there and started talking about percentages, so y'all know about what percentage y'all took from us and reduced from our prevailing wage rate and failed to account for yet for the last 22 years. Consequently, our pension plans are being unfunded for city employees because you're diverting the money and using it at will of the Hackler Board and the City Council, making payments to union trusts that provide you contributions to run for office. Now, something's wrong with this picture, and make history, Mr. Wilson. Last word is on. Get it on.
Thank you. Sid, are you still here? I do not see Sid. No applause. Okay, Miss Rochelle Balin.
Thank you, sir,
please
for your
come
time.
forward.
My name is Rochelle Balin. I am a citizen of the United States.
Wait, if we could be quiet in the back and give Miss Balin the opportunity to chat. Okay, start her time all over.
Can you start my time all over?
Yep.
Thank
They
you.
did. They
Thank
did.
you, sir. I appreciate your time. My name is Rochelle Balin. I am an American citizen. I have watched the most un-American activities happening the last 2 years. I long for police who are our heroes. I long for sheriffs who serve and protect. I long for judges to be honorable. It would shake the conscience and the consciousness of Americans if they knew we had a centralized mental health court, taking people, putting them in, drugging them. I want an investigation. I called Zev Yaroslavsky's office. A supervisor said, the courts tell us they're the law. We have a constitution, and in California we have the Constitution of 1849. I am in shock at what I've been seeing happen. People have to care. I want people to get $15 an hour. Could you live on $15 an hour? If you are public servants and I want to serve the public, we need to do more, not drive fancy cars, not do things that are illegal just because you can. We need help. We need to come together. We are good people. We need to sleep at night. We need to know when we go to bed we've done something good for humanity. We need to care for humanity. Every single ethnic human being I've ever met, we need to help each other. I want you to help me, to help you. Be better, be kinder. Read my daughter's federal complaint. That should never have happened to a citizen of the United States of America fighting for amendment rights, fighting for other people, caring and loving this country, an ambassador globally going all over the world. We need to work together. Instead of thwarting and trying to silence her, Melissa Balin should be admired for her love for her country, for what she cares politically for human beings. I don't know how you can help us. You need to help us. I'm getting answers.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes general public comment. That brings us where, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, Council has motions for posting and referral.
They are posted and referred.
The desk is clear.
Announcements. Seeing none, if everyone could please rise. Everyone in the council chambers, please rise. We are going to adjourn. I will look to Mr. Koretz's side. Do you, Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to adjourn in memory of one of the great comic geniuses of our time. Sid Caesar passed away on Thursday at age 91. He was known for remarkable wit and pioneering use of live television in a show that really reflected genius called Your Show of Shows. He's remembered for his fantastic dialects, monologues, and pantomime, and revolutionary mastery of sketch comedy. He also had legendary writers including Neil Simon, Carl Reiner, Mel Brooks, Woody Allen, and a number of others. Although his appearance grew less frequent over the years, he continued to show up on TV and in several beloved movies, from It's a Mad, 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 Mad World to Grease and several Mel Brooks films. He also won 2 Emmys, a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Television Critics Association, and a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. He was married to Florence Levy for 67 years until her passing in 2010. They had 3 children, Michelle, Rick, and Karen. And Karen's a friend of mine and a fellow animal activist and was on the West Hollywood Animal Issues Task Force when we set that up a number of years ago. They will all miss their father dearly, as will millions of people throughout the world that were fans.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. And his facial expressions were just hilarious. Mr. Labange?
Yeah, members, I ask for you to adjourn it in the memory of Louis Yablonsky, who was a professor at Cal State Northridge for over 30 years in sociology. He was loved by his students, renowned in his scholarly studies. He passed away of natural causes in Santa Monica at 89, survived by his son Mitch and many, many loved ones. I ask for you to adjourn in memory of Louis Yablonsky, educator.
Any more to my right? Okay, now I'll go over any adjourning motions on the left side. Okay, members, this council meeting is adjourned. See you on Friday.